Well, good. Don't forget to put on your mic. All right, good evening. This is the June 16th, 2021 Cottage Grove City Council meeting, which I'm calling to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'd please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, will the clerk please do the roll?
Councilmember Mills.
Here.
Councilmember Dennis.
Here.
Councilmember Thiede.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Bailey.
Here. Next on our agenda this evening is open forum. This is the opportunity for anybody that wants to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda. I did notice a couple things here before I go through the list. So we did have a sign-up sheet out in the entryway, and that's what we ask you to do to sign up. There are some people that want to speak about hens and ducks in Cottage Grove. What I'm going to do is, even though it's not a public hearing, I will allow and going to accept people to speak on that topic when we have that point. So we won't do it during open forum. And then there was a Scott Urban. Scott, are you out there somewhere? That's what I thought. I just want to make sure that that was okay. So I was. No, you're okay. That's cool. So, okay, we'll be able to take those during the regular agenda. So then what I'll do is I'll go down the list then with the other ones that have items that are not on tonight's agenda. The first individual is Jennifer Nedby or Nedby?
Nedry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if you would like to just go up and state your name and address for the record. I'm sorry I messed up your name.
I usually get nerdy, so. And I excuse my little bit of nerves here.
Okay.
So as I said, my name is Jennifer Nedry. I reside at 7764 Jasmine Avenue South. My husband Wayne and I have lived in Cottage Grove for about 18 years now. I've been fortunate, I'm here to speak about saving the Mississippi Dunes. I've been fortunate enough to explore the area, including a backwater canoe trip with a Cottage Grove Rec when they had their opportunities. And I have been, of course, to outings when Doc's Landing patio existed. Myself, anyone from the company that I work for in St. Paul Park, friends from the cities, out-of-town guests, anyone that we brought to that location just remarked at how pristine it really was. I've always said that the best thing that Cottage Grove can do is bring something and offer something unique, and this property would do that, converting it to something other than housing. The City of Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan has identified access to the Mississippi River as a top priority, and this park could also provide an opportunity from an educational standpoint. Our local schools, our scouts, other organizations could use this to explore and learn about this unique location. I've personally driven to Lebanon Hills in Egan, to Prior Lake, to other locations to explore, hike, and paddleboard. We even go to a lake in Wisconsin. This, I think, would give me a park that's more natural than the Kingston Park that is right in my neighborhood, although my dogs love that very much. And it would also bring people to the local businesses. I think it can serve populations from children to seniors to everyone in between, and it can meet an identified priority that the citizens here in Cottage Grove have already identified. There was recently a public meeting to discuss the future of Cedarhurst, which I believe is also a privately held entity. We've already heard from the public that this is something that they want here in Cottage Grove. I did also hear at the last meeting that we need to do things for the greater good, and I think that this would be one thing that we can preserve for current and future generations. So thanks everyone for listening.
Fantastic. And you didn't have a reason to be nervous. Yeah. You were good. Thank you. The other items that individuals had signed up for, I believe it's John Byrne or Birch? Ben? Yes, if you would like to go up and speak, and I guess I can mention your topic is regarding Cedarhurst.
You got it.
And just state your name and address for the record.
Perfect, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of this council. My name is John Benz. I reside at 9858 67th Street South. I want to thank you for the opportunity to share mine and actually many of my neighbors' concerns relating to the development of the Cedarhurst Mansion property. First, we'd like to acknowledge that we understand that this property is zoned for mixed use and will eventually be developed. We also understand that it's a difficult job that this council has to balance the desires of its constituents with those of the developer. However, having had an opportunity to react to a preliminary site plan offered by the prospective buyer, we have some great concerns. My neighbors, people in the community at large, and I absolutely believe that we need this council's help to control the density, ensure that there's enough buffer between the buildings and our current residences, and maintain the integrity of the historical property as best as possible in order for us to maintain our current tranquility, protect our kids, and also protect our property values. Left unchecked, we believe that the current plan would put far too many units far too close to our current properties, and despite the nice notion of being in keeping with the community, as they had suggested, it has not yet, they have not offered anything to yet convince us that they're aware of the impact on schools, traffic, and the space that actually works for Cottage Grove. As you may be aware, there is, and if you're not, we'd be happy to share it, there is a change.org petition that has yielded close to 500 signatures in less than a week with no money behind it. So a complete grassroots effort. And along with those signatures, there is a pretty significant amount of comments there from Cottage Grove families. So I strongly urge that you review this comment section and read the calls for lower density. Hear the concern that there's not enough green space for what we would expect for a Cottage Grove development, and how the current plans don't show any ponding, which could yield significant problems in the future when we're talking about water. So I want to close my comments tonight with an invitation. So any and all of you have an open invitation to mine or any of my neighbors' homes to be our guests, to experience the peaceful outdoor space that we currently enjoy. You see for yourself what we've worked so many years for, and in that visit, you'd be able to imagine what a 30-foot building would look like on our property line. Imagine the light pollution that would be from a parking lot 200 feet from our bedroom windows, and the noise of having 192 units of worth of people in addition to the commercial traffic that we would see that wasn't there before. So on behalf of many of my neighbors, and it is many, and myself, we implore you as representatives of the citizens of Cottage Grove to please consider us and our families that are impacted by the sheer density and proximity to this development when making approvals for these plans in the future. We've worked so hard for many, many years to build the dream homes a reality, and we chose Cottage Grove to make that our home. We need each of you to side with us when the time comes, so our little corner of the world does not irreparably change for the worse. So we really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness, and hopefully your consideration in the future for when these plans come in and come to fruition. So thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you for sharing. All right, then also Scott Knudsen, same subject, Cedarhurst Development.
Well, I'm not going to be as eloquent as that gentleman was. Jeez, holy smokes, that's a tough act to follow. My name's Scott Knudsen. I live across the ravine from him, 9464 67th Street South. Also came with the petition he's talking about. My wife started that petition. We have over 500 signatures. I'm going to leave this with you.
Perfect.
A lot of them did come up with, like, for instance, my wife, her address came up as St. Paul, Minnesota, even though we live in Cottage Grove. So there's a lot of neighbors in here that came up saying they're in St. Paul. No, they're in Cottage Grove. So I'll leave you with that. The petition basically says we'd like the original plan altered for more green space and less parking lots. Mansion preservation, put it a priority. It's a beautiful place. We've had presidents stay there. I mean, it needs to be at the focus of any development that's put forward. Reduce high density. We moved out to Cottage Grove for the small town feel, to get away from the high density of living in the city. We moved out here to have, like he said, our little piece of the world, peace, quiet, tranquility, not to have a 4-story apartment complex put, as he said, less than 200 feet away from his house. That's not what we decided. That's not what we signed up for. It wasn't zoned for that when we came out, when we built our houses here. That wasn't in the cards when we decided to come to Cottage Grove. As far as the types of properties there, I'd like to see a reduction in rental properties. I mean, we know with rentals, we get cycles of different people coming in and out. It's just a fact of life. I'm curious, have the police department been included in discussions for this development of this property? I mean, put 192 units, like you said, in there. There's a lot of people, a lot of different dynamics. You're gonna see an increase in services for the police department, the fire department, and as well as traffic, as he said. So, like, I don't need to sit here and take my full 3 minutes, but I'd like to present the petition
You
with
want to
you.
bring it up here? I'll take it.
And in closing, as he said, please implore, there's a ton of families that live right there that built their house to have a nice, quiet piece of property, not to have a multi-level apartment complex put in their backyard.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you. And thanks for speaking.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that was, other than the people that had signed up for items that are on tonight's agenda, that was everything that was, other people that had wanted to speak. But by chance, did anybody that come in that wanted to speak on something that wasn't on tonight's agenda that maybe forgot to sign up? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead then and close the open forum, and I'll move to number 5, which is adoption of the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Dennis, second by Councilmember Thiede. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, this evening is consent calendar. Is there anything that council would like to pull on consent?
Presentations, no presentations, right?
Oh, there is, I'm sorry, yeah. There is 6 of those presentations. There are none this evening, so I'll move to 7. Thank you for that. Consent calendar,
I would like to pull M, please.
you want to pull M? And I'm going to pull B and F just to inform the public on those items. Is there anything else council wants to pull? Okay, why don't we go ahead and start with you, Councilmember Thiede, M, which is Oakwood Park improvements.
Yeah, so I wanted to just kind of discuss this a little bit because I've had a lot of people talking to me about like band shells or little, kind of gazebos or Central Park area type deals where residents can have things, whether it's, a little band or if it's a little something or other. And back in 2005, we had actually done a concept plan for Oakwood Park that maybe some of you have seen, and it showed actually with the kind of the hill and everything, kind of a natural amphitheater, okay? And so when we built this building, we actually put a little amphitheater back behind here, which I imagine there's probably a lot of people that don't realize that. We do have something on the website, but I was gonna ask Zach, our Parks Director, to step up and just kind of explain a little bit about what's going on with the stuff that's being done at Oakwood Park now, how it affects some of those concept plans, and maybe a little bit more on our amphitheater back here and what people can use it. They go on the website and I think they can just call up Neil or something like that, and I don't think we're charging anything for it, but, so maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Yeah, in 2005, when we did the original Oakwood Park Master Plan, it was a pretty large project, a multi-million-dollar project. And when we built the amphitheater here, we had kind of decided to redo the master plan for Oakwood Park, seeing that, that we would see how this operated and how it was used first before we make that a priority. So we redid the Oakwood Park Master Plan. We tried to focus on the playground, restoring the building, fixing up the T-ball field, and fixing the parking lot. So we're trying to do all that, more in the $1 million range as opposed to multi-million. So we think those are important items to tick off, but we can also keep space for the future amphitheater. So we're not sacrificing the 2005 master plan for this master plan that we're working on this year. So in terms of the amphitheater that's here, yep, it's open to nonprofit organizations, federal, state, other government agencies, civic nonprofit groups, business-based associations, homeowners associations, neighborhoods associations, and it's free of use. They just have to call City Hall here and get a permit to do that. And then they get access to the amphitheater, and then we discuss internally about what facilities they might need to support that. So it is an opportunity. We'd like to see it get used more, I think, so anything else?
Is there anything that we have that's kind of like guidelines for use? Let's say an organization let's say the arts people wanted to have like a little band or something like that, and they wanted to do maybe some concessions or something like that, is that possible, or is there any type of guidelines to say, here's kind of the rules and things like that, or?
Yeah, there's a facility use policy, so I'd recommend people go online and take a look at that, or call City Hall and we can get you one. But yes, we've had outdoor, the Arts Commission supported a Music in the Parks program, and this was one of the sites that they had used amongst multiple other park sites. Locally grown theater has had multiple plays out there, and they've had concession merchandise as well, so those opportunities definitely exist.
Okay, so again, if they go on the website and they look up amphitheater, that'll pop up, and it has Neil's name and email address to contact if anybody wanted to use that. So, there you go. All right. Thanks, Zach. I don't know if anybody else has any questions for Zach.
Nope, I think we're good.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you, Zach, and thank you, Dave. Two items I just want to bring up that are part of consent, and just so you, the public knows, when we do consent, these are like what we typically would say non-controversial items. And so what I wanted to share with you is two items. One, just for the public to be aware. So one of the requests that we're doing under consent is we're adopting a resolution approving a capital bonding request with the state of Minnesota for a 50-meter pool that would be part of the future, if the voters approve, community center. And part of the reason we're doing that is there is a swim club that is actually spearheading that effort to improve and increase the size of what have been our original thoughts with the water park, at least the size of the pool. And they're looking at adding some lanes so periodically they can actually do competition. Part of that in other communities that they have, not our specific group, but other swim clubs, have approached the state and have been successful in gaining some of the funding to help make these outdoor water aquatics places more reasonable in price than that. So we've agreed as a council, or will be, I hope, tonight, agreeing to ask the state for that support with this particular group. That will help also bring down some of the cost in the community center. The other item, which we hear a lot about at the council, and that has to do with, traffic lights, congestion, and that. And the other item, which is item F, is the 80th Street and Hinton Avenue reconstruction and signal modification. So for anybody that's been going down 80th Street over by Crestview, you'll notice that the one building that was on the corner is now gone. That is going to be a Caribou cabin. There was some concern by some of the school district, in essence, too, or some in that area there about student traffic, pedestrian traffic, and so on. And so what we are doing, we've done actually a couple things. I believe it was our last council meeting. We actually moved the entrance further back from Hinton to get into Caribou, which would be a future Caribou cabin.
Back from 80th Street.
Was actually Hinton, on Hinton, right. So it's going to be going more to the north. And then second thing, what we're doing is we're modifying and relooking at the whole stoplight situation, the signage, turn lanes, and all the kind of stuff that go along with that particular intersection, just to make sure that we're safe. We did have our police department go out there and monitor pedestrian traffic. We heard some comments about kids cross over here and there, and some of that was found not to be accurate. But the fact of the matter is we did want to make sure we don't want to have a concern with students crossing at that intersection, and they do have a crossing guard, and we'll have police, and like we normally do, we have a police officer at every school when they open and when they close during the day. So anyway, I just want to mention that to the public, because I know people have commented to me, and I'm sure to many others up on the council, about that dang light on Hinton seems to be stuck all the time. Well, it's probably true that it has been stuck a few times. There has been some issues with that light. And so other than doing those kind of fixes, Ryan's shaking his head back there from our Public Works, we will be making some adjustments to that intersection to make it safer and more efficient for pedestrians and cars. So that was the two items for me. There was no other items that were pulled on consent, so at this point, I'll look for a
Move
motion.
consent.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede, second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So if you're here for anything on tonight's consent calendar, all of those items have been approved. All right, number 8 is approved disbursement. 8A is to pay the bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
We have a motion by Councilmember Dennis,
Second.
second by Councilmember Mills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So next we'll go to 9, which is public hearings. We do have one this evening. A is the All Saints Lutheran Church Jazz in July concert special events permit. And our community development director, I guess however you want to say it, Ben Blake is going to walk us through this one.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, tonight we're happy to present to you an application for a special event permit for All Saints Lutheran Church, which is located at 8100 Belden Boulevard, for an outdoor jazz concert to be held on Sunday, July 25th from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. The proposed event will include some food trucks, 3 in particular, Hy-Vee's food truck, the Egg Roll Queen, as well as McMart Ice Cream and Candy. Those will be set up from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And then the outdoor concert itself will be from 7 to 8:30 p.m. They'll be set up on the south side of the church with seating on the lawn area between the church and Belden Boulevard. The request does include amplified music, which will end with the concert at 8:30 p.m. As pictured here as well, the South Washington County Carriage Schoolie Bus will also be there as part of the activities. Just to let you guys know, 2 other outdoor concerts are planned for July 11th and July 18th. These are a little bit different in that they're not providing food trucks, nor are they advertising these concerts to the general public. Therefore, those 2 concerts are exempt from the special event permit requirements. In terms of emergency preparedness plan, so the City of Cottage Grove is following Governor Walz's executive orders on safely sunsetting COVID-19. Which have lifted capacity limits, distancing requirements, and masking. Although there's no longer a state masking requirement for face coverings in most settings, MDH and CDC are still strongly recommended that anyone who is not fully vaccinated continue to wear them, which has been mentioned to the church. And since this is an outdoor event, it is subject with all other outdoor events through the special event permit process to cancellation by the city if there's unfavorable conditions at that time. In terms of the food trucks and food sales, they'll have to abide by the following requirements, which includes obtaining a license from Washington County Health Department, as well as inspections from the City of Cottage Grove Fire Inspector. In terms of parking and security, off-street parking will be provided within the church parking lot. Traffic control will be also provided at the 2 access points into the parking lot. The applicant must maintain all fire and emergency lanes within the parking lot, and then overflow parking will be provided at the armory across the street. In reviewing this and based on past events at the church, the Public Safety Department does not believe there's a need for on-site police during the event. So with that, staff is recommending that council hold the public hearing to consider the special event permit and authorize the issuance of the special event permit to All Saints Lutheran Church. I also believe Jack Levold is in attendance, should you have any specific questions. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
I was just going to make that comment. I was going to say, we don't think we need police coverage there, but with Mr. Jack Levold, we may need that. Knowing Jack myself, so. Council, is there any questions for staff at this point on this item? Or, I know Mr. Levold is here representing that group. Any need for him to come up? Okay, so then, thank you, Ben. So I will go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's anybody that wants to speak on this item, for or against, is welcome to do so at this time. Anybody at all? All right, I will go ahead then and close the public hearing, and I'll look for a motion. Councilmember Olson.
Mayor, as both you and I are members of this church and understand the importance of this event each year, I would strongly support authorizing issuance of a special event permit to All Saints Lutheran Church to be held on Sunday, July 25th, 2021, contingent upon conditions outlined in the memo from Community Development Director Boyke and Public Safety Director Kerner dated June 9th, 2021, and all applicable state and local statutes.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Olson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Mills. You okay? All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by, oh, I'm sorry, yes.
I just want to make a comment that I'm looking very much forward to the jazz events. And anyone who has not attended them, make sure they go. 'cause
Super fun.
they're
It's fun.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
it's really fun.
Sorry, thank you.
No, thank you. Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd also like to formally recognize Mr. Lebold as County Commissioner, former County Commissioner, so.
And Watershed, and do we want to keep going down that list? He's been very active in the community. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, next on our agenda is number 10, which is bid awards. We do have one this evening. A is the South District Sanitary Sewer Project Phase 1 bid award. And our Director of Public Safety, Ryan Burfine, will take us through this. Oh, I said public safety, Public Works.
New
I just,
title. New title.
Randy's like going, what the heck? Yep, there you go. Sorry about that. Public
problem.
Works Director, Ryan Burfine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So last Thursday, June 10th, we did accept bids for the South District Trunk Sanitary Sewer Phase 1 project. We did receive 7 bids, which was good to see, and just for a brief overview, this is bringing sanitary sewer to the portion of the city south of 100th Street. It's about a 6,000-foot length of pipe that we're going to build. Very deep, very big pipe. It's going to serve about 4,000 acres of the city for many, many years of ongoing development. So we bring it from the Met Council trunk sanitary sewer that goes down to the treatment plant all the way up to Ideal Avenue. So a very big project, which we are excited to take those bids on. Like I mentioned, 7 bids were received. We did receive favorable bid results. Geislinger & Sons was the apparent low bidder. You can see it's about 10% below our engineer's estimate, which is a good spot to be. There were 3 alternates with the project. Alternates 1 and 2, those were kind of both achieving the same thing. So alternate 1 is lining of the concrete manholes with a rubber membrane. It protects it from sewer gases and corrosion over time. Alternate 2 is just a different type of polyconcrete manhole. It's something Met Council is starting to do more of, so we wanted to bid that as well to see how that compared from a pricing standpoint. It is something, one or the other, that we wanted to do because it's very important from a long-term maintenance standpoint. And based on the bid results, the lining process that we've been doing in the past is still much more competitive, so we are recommending alternate 1 to be awarded, not alternate number 2. And alternate number 3, that actually extended the scope of the project a little bit. That brought it across Ideal Avenue. The base bid just brought it up to the east side of Ideal Avenue and left it there. We were still working with the landowner to obtain the necessary easements to get it across Ideal Avenue and further to the west, which we were able to obtain, which was good. So we are recommending awarding alternate number 3 as well to get that pipe to the west side, which is where there's more development interest. So it's very important to get it to that side of the road to serve future development. So the recommendation tonight is to award the project to Geislinger & Sons for that base bid plus alternates numbers 1 and 3. And I'll be happy to stand for questions.
All right, Councilmember Olson.
Ryan, you probably knew I was going to ask this question, but have we worked with Geislinger & Sons before?
So Councilmember Olson, we have not worked with them directly. They really specialize in big pipe projects, which that's their kind of bread and butter. They do a lot of work with Met Council. With all the big sewer they do, so very well known in the industry. Like I said, this is right up their alley, which is good to see them as a low bidder. So very comfortable with the company and the work they do, and it'll be good to work with them. Our consultant has worked with them, who's our engineer on this project.
Good. I just wanted to make sure that we were comfortable that we were going to get great service for what we're going to pay. The second question I had is you briefly mentioned manholes. As you're keenly aware, that tends to be a hot topic with people, particularly on the more well-traveled roadways. We've got, lots of comments out there about manholes and how they eventually sink and what that does for a car's alignment and all that sort of thing. Can you explain a little more about the differences between the manhole covers that you just talked about and how that will impact the ability to actually keep that manhole flush with the road?
Yep, certainly, Councilmember Olson. So people are probably used to it when you drive around town, you get that very annoying thump. That's something that happens over time, whether we're doing thin overlays and raising that roadway or the actual manhole itself starts getting sediment in it and you start losing the roadway itself, can drop the manhole structure. Specifically, this lining does help to prevent any issues with that manhole or the ground around it moving. But also, when specifically this project, we did look at what this future collector roadway, right now it's just in a farm field. But we looked at that future roadway and where it's gonna land, so we actually put this out of any kind of wheel path, so just in case there were to be issues with it someday, people won't be able to drive on it because it's actually behind the curb line. So we've addressed it that way as well.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Any other council comments on this item? All right, seeing none, look for a motion from the council.
I would move that we adopt Resolution 2021-090, awarding the South District Sanitary Sewer Phase 1 project to Geislinger and Sons for the base bid plus alternates number 1 and 3 for a total of $3,558,880.50.
All right. I have a motion by Councilmember Thiede, second by Councilmember Olson. Again, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
All right, now we're to the regular agenda. We do have 4 items on this evening's regular agenda. The first one is the North Star Sheets expansion, and Mike Marosla is going to walk us through this. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Opus Development. Oops. Apologize. There we go. All right. Opus Development Company, on behalf of North Star Sheets, has submitted an application for preliminary and final plat and site plan approval. The project is located at 7550 91st Street South. The property is zoned I-5 railroad access and is guided as industrial on the land use plan. A little background on the project. The City Council on March 1st, 2018 approved the following: a preliminary plat to create 4 lots of record. It's worth noting, though, that 91st Street Alcove is privately maintained by the adjacent property owners and is located within public right-of-way. That is the tan area on the screen, right in here. So that's important to know. Also, they have received site plan approval to construct a 161,100 square foot manufacturing building. The approved site plan also included a future expansion, which the proposal in front of us tonight is located within. And the subject property also received a variance to have truck dock doors adjacent to a public roadway. So that leads us to the proposed, or the current use, which is North Star Sheets. They create corrugated sheets, which gets turned into boxes for packaging of goods. The majority of the rolls of paper that get manufactured in the corrugated sheets come in through this railroad spur on the north side of the building. Currently, the site can hold 4 rail cars, and then there's a large area of storage of the rolls that get created into the cardboard. The fabrication process, it goes through a process and it's warehoused and shipped out. But since the growth of e-commerce, the site has seen incredible growth, and the current semi-truck storage and storage inside this facility is not meeting demand. So the applicant's proposing an addition to the site that we're going to discuss here in a moment. As part of this project, as previously mentioned, as a preliminary and final plat, the applicant's requesting to create a 4.52 acre lot on the existing 23.03 acre outlot of the Southeast Industrial Park, highlighted in red on the screen. The site plan review has 2 components. The first component is a 35,600 square foot addition to the existing facility. The second was at 84 trailer parking stalls, so accessory use. It's also worth noting that the proposed addition includes a second railroad spur that's going to be constructed at a later date to enter the facility. We'll talk about that more in a minute here. However, when that railroad spur gets added, rail turnaround pad will be constructed. The rail turnaround pad will assist in delivery of cars and removal of cars from the site. The first part we're talking about is the building addition. The proposed addition will be constructed of the same materials that's currently found on site and will match the existing height. The proposed railroad spur that we just talked about will increase the rail car storage to 10 cars when that is constructed. It's also worth noting that the proposed addition will be mainly used for material storage, so there'll be no increase in jobs or staffing on site. However, during the original approvals in 2018, proof of parking was added at the rear of the building and highlighted on the screen here in blue. There's 84 stalls in this area. If parking becomes a problem, the applicant said they would work with the city to resolve that matter by utilizing the proof of parking or find other ways of resolving that item or that concern, excuse me. As you can see, the proposed addition will match the existing building With the blue tip-up panel corrugated, or blue tip-up panel, the match the existing. Other part of this project is the off-street parking accessory use. It's a parking lot for 84 semi-trailers. The proposed curb cuts from 91st Street Alcove are 75-foot wide to allow for ease of access into the parking lot. The stall dimensions are designed to accommodate trailers, which are 55 feet long, 22 feet wide. They have a concrete dolly pad right here, which allows for the semi-trailers to rest on there without damaging the asphalt. The applicant has done a lot of work to try to preserve the vegetation. There's a natural screening here along the west side of the property. The applicant is proposing a 87.2-foot setback to preserve the vegetation, like previously said. However, the zoning ordinance does allow for a 10-foot setback, so there is quite a bit of setback and quite a bit of working with us to preserve that amenity. Also, as part of this project, the applicant is going to be extending the sidewalk along 91st Alcove. This project has some tree removal associated with it. The applicant is proposing to remove 1,194 caliper inches. By right, the applicant removes 60% or 1,142. However, that does require tree mitigation and replacement of 52 caliper inches, but however, we require replacement at 2-to-1 or 26 caliper inches. The applicant is proposing to, that equals 11 trees, excuse me. However, the total landscaping plan, as shown in the bottom here, right corner, it has 42 trees. The 11 replacement trees will be utilized after the plantings are planted, as shown on the plan, to fill gaps in the view shed into the parking lot. Also, in 2018, the City Council approved a tree mitigation agreement with the property owners. The tree mitigation agreement was $64,054.20. That was cash in lieu of replacement. There's a lot of trees previously on site that were removed. However, that $64,000 was triggered on the issuance of a building permit on Outlet A. However, this project in front of us tonight on Outlet A, the proposed subdivision parcel, does not have a building permit. So the applicant has agreed to pay $20,000 of that as part of this application. That $20,000 will be used on park property here to add additional screening and habitat restoration. And then the remaining amount will be paid to the city when Outlet A develops. This item was reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission on May 24th. There was a public hearing held at that time, and then at that time, there was no comments. And we have received no comments from the public as well. At this time, we have two recommendations for the council. Option one, approving a preliminary final plat for new plat, Southeast Industrial Second Edition. And the second one is approving a site plan for the 35,600 square foot addition and for the off-street accessory use on Lot 1, Block 1 of the Southeast Industrial Park. That ends my presentation, and the applicant is here for any questions.
All right. First of all, council, any questions for our staff? All right. Did you want to? I recognize you in the audience there.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Phil Catnaugh with Opus Development Company, address 10350 Bren Road West, Minnetonka. Just wanted to say, Mayor, members of the council, wonderful to be back so soon with a great customer that we have with North Star Sheets. Compliments again to staff and the city attorney for working with us and continuing to be just a steward for continuing to help support businesses grow. And e-commerce has had a huge influence on this business, as I think we all can attest. Who would have thought making cardboard was so much fun? But again, certainly make myself available for any questions that you have.
Sounds good. Well, we're glad to have you back and glad to see them doing well in Cottage Grove. Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. It's not a public hearing, but is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none. Council, we have two items before us for staff recommendation.
I can make the first motion, Mayor.
Go ahead.
To adopt Resolution 2021-088, approving the preliminary and final plat to be called Southeast Industrial Park Second Edition.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Thiede. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And then we have number two.
Mayor, I'll make that motion to adopt Resolution 2021-089, approving the site plan review for a 35,600 square foot addition to the existing facility located at 7550 91st Street South, and an off-street parking accessory use on Lot 1, Block 1, Southeast Industrial Park, Second Edition.
A lot of pauses in there. That's a motion made by Councilmember Mills. Now do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Olson. Again, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for coming back. All right, next on the regular agenda is B, which is the Pine Harbor Church Site Plan Review. And Emily Schmitz, you will take us through this one. Welcome, Emily.
All right, good evening, Mayor Bailey, members of the council. Next item on the agenda this evening is an application received by Pine Harbor Church. It is for a site plan review. For those of you who aren't familiar, Pine Harbor Church is located south on 61, so just south of town, adjacent to River Oaks Golf Course. And then the Pine Coulee neighborhood is just to the south there, just to get you a little bit orientated. A little bit of background, the Pine Harbor Church was actually originally approved back in 1983. At that time, it was known as the Jubilee Church. And so they were approved and they constructed the church at that time. And then in 1993, they received approval to construct an additional structure, the Discovery Center, as shown on the site plan before you, which allowed them to kind of expand their operations on the site. So it added their academy as well as their childcare. So 3 total uses essentially on the site: the Harbor Church, the Kids Care, and then the Harbor Academy. So they are bursting at the seams currently with COVID and things of that nature. So they are planning to move a 9,800 square foot modular structure to their site to allow for a little bit of wiggle room, for lack of a better way to put it. So they are proposing this structure to be installed kind of off the southeast corner of the existing Discovery Center that is there. The structure is currently within the Anoka-Hennepin School District. This district does not have a use for the structure any longer, so Pine Harbor would like to continue its life and move it to their site. Couple of items. The exterior materials that are currently on the structure do need to be removed before the structure is transported, for lack of a better way to put it. So the applicant has indicated they're proposing to add a hardy siding, paint that to match the existing buildings on the site. There are mechanical units planned to be on the roof of the building. They are proposing or planning to paint those units so they blend the best that they can. In the next slide, there's quite the mature buffer of trees along Highway 61, so the hope is that those will be screened from public view. The applicant is working with a licensed septic professional to make sure that their existing system, I should say, as well as Washington County, to make sure that that system can support the additional classrooms. As I mentioned, there's quite the mature buffer of trees along Highway 61. I will mention a handful of those do need to be removed to move the structure into the site. Some of those mature trees, though, will be maintained, but I want to make sure that I note that the applicant is replacing all of those inches on the site along Highway 61 as well as along the south property line. And then, of course, they're planning to put some landscaping around the modular structure once it's moved in, freshen it up a bit. And finally, I just wanted to capitalize on 2 conditions that you'll see in the approval. One of those being we are requiring that the applicant does plat the parcel. At this point, it's a little goofy. Their property line almost extends all the way to the other side of Highway 61. So we just want to clean it up a little bit and get the MnDOT there'll be an ownership then of that right-of-way as opposed to an easement. And then secondly, an access agreement. We just cannot for the life of us find an agreement for Pine Harbor who does actually access their parcel through our River Oaks property. So we just want to make sure that that's recorded against both properties to clean things up. So with that, I will leave the recommendation before you. Mr. Scott Urban is here for any additional questions you might have as well.
All right. First of all, council, any questions for our staff? Yeah, Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you. Just not a question, but just a feedback. As council liaison to the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission did recommend this unanimously and also issued, if I recall, some very positive statements that it was nice to see an expansion of a school opportunity here in the community. So there was 100% agreement that this was a good thing to do.
All right, sounds good. Any other comments? Scott, do you want to come up? Mr. Urban?
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for having me here. I must stop and say thank you to the public service. About 2 months ago, we had a fire in the daycare, and the police were first to respond, and they were actually the ones to put it out. And then the fire department also stayed there. And it was just a fabulous thing. They kept it from really being closed down to being low smoke damage. So I wanted to thank you, and great job in your recommendations and hiring and all the other, as well as the committee, the Planning Commission, fantastic. Every time I thought, man, how are we gonna get this done? Emily would say, oh, it'll be okay, we'll get you through this, we'll get you through this. So if there's any questions I can answer.
I don't think there will be, but you're good with all the recommendations and working with the staff, you said? Perfect. Okay. Sounds good. Council, you have a motion before you on this item too. Where wants to take
I
it?
would move that the city council adopt Resolution 2021-083, approving the site plan review for the addition of 9,800 square foot modular structure to be moved to the site located at 11125 West Point Douglas Road South.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Thiede.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dennis. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck. All right, next on our regular agenda is C, which is the Fowl and Poultry Ordinance review. And Ben Boyk is going to take us through this one.
All right, back again here. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So yes, tonight we are reviewing the Fowl and Poultry Ordinance. City Council had requested staff to research the topic, specifically on how other metro communities are regulating fowl and poultry, specifically related to backyard hens. So a little bit of background, the ordinance was last amended back in July of 2013, which did allow the keeping of fowl poultry on residential properties between 3 and 5 acres. There were some requirements added to the ordinance, including obtaining a license from the city. There was a cap on the amount of full fowl and poultry of 4 with no roosters. Certain coop requirements must be located in the rear yard. All coops must have a minimum setback of 100 feet from adjacent dwellings and a minimum setback of 50 feet from all property lines, as well as specific design requirements for the coop. And finally, all food and grain must be kept in rodent-proof manner. So it's just a general overview of kind of the setting today in terms of what's allowed for keeping of fowl and poultry. So when council requested this research from staff, we went back and looked at the information from 2012. At that time, 52 communities were surveyed. 17 of those 52 communities did allow backyard fowl and poultry, roughly 33%, while 35 of 52 did not. So staff went back, surveyed those 35 communities that did not allow backyard fowl and poultry in 2012, and have found that 18 of those 35 have since amended their ordinance, which roughly equates to about half. Very similar performance standards as what we have today, although the setbacks are quite less to allow them on most residential properties. The cap being between 4 and 6 total hens. Coops again must be located in the rear yard. The minimum setback though being anywhere from 5 to 20 feet from all property lines, and then being a minimum of anywhere from 25 to 50 from adjacent homes. And most ordinances that have been adopted by other communities do include performance standards regarding design and maintenance. This just gives you an idea of the map geographically of those communities that were surveyed based on that 2012 survey, and those that have since adopted ordinances and those have not. The ones in green being ones that have adopted. I should note that Chanhassen also recently, I believe, approved an ordinance, so that should be green as well. So pros and cons of backyard hens. Certainly staff's not an expert on chickens, but in doing the research, finding the arguments for, that being they promote sustainability by providing residents easy access to food with their eggs, providing pest control for various insects and bugs, as well as compost, and the educational and entertainment component as well. Arguments against backyard fowl and poultry, the biggest one being potential nuisance to adjacent property owners, odor, rodent control, yard maintenance. So again, typically that's the biggest concern with potential impacts. Also, in speaking with a local realtor who's had experience trying to sell or help home buyers buy a property, that generally properties adjacent to chicken coops are more often a deterrent and interested home buyers, especially with the smaller residential lots, not so much with larger ones. And then also in talking to some of the developers, recently many new developments or new neighborhoods in town do have HOA bylaws that specifically prohibit backyard fowl and poultry. So just to note that. Other cons or negatives, hens produce noise while laying eggs, similar to human conversation. Chickens potentially can attract predators, and potentially the requiring of additional city resources for licensing and code enforcement. Also back in 2012, the organization Chicken Run Rescue was involved in the discussions. We reached out to them just to get their take on how things have changed since then. Basically, they stated that the growth of residential fowl and poultry keeping, as well as the pandemic, have exacerbated the number of birds victimized by care, lack of enforcement, and abandonment. Basically, in that the organization is overwhelmed with keeping those birds that they can clean and keep fed. So in looking at the information, presenting three options for consideration by council. One is to amend the ordinance by allowing backyard fowl and poultry, based on the fact that many communities have recently adopted ordinances to allow them, and that those communities do have specific language regarding performance standards in an attempt to reduce any negative impacts to adjacent property owners. The second one was looking at potential reduction of the minimum lot size from the current requirements of 3 acres down to 1 acre. We researched that, and essentially those properties that fall between 3 and 5 acres currently is about 153 residential lots. If the council were to opt to reduce that minimum lot size down to 1 acre, that would open the door up to a total of 481 residential lots. And this may be a good option in terms of an incremental step towards allowing backyard hens on smaller residential lots. This is just a map kind of showing on the left those properties that fit between that 3 and 5 acres under the current ordinance, and on the right showing if that was to be reduced, if the lot size was to be reduced to 1 acre, and those properties that would be allowed. Third option for consideration is take no action at this time. As mentioned, although many metro communities have recently amended their ordinances, some still have not. Also, in researching the topic, while the majority of property owners who opt to raise backyard hens start with the right intentions, it's not always the case in the end. Some fail to provide the necessary attention and maintenance, which can result in a nuisance to adjacent homeowners. And finally, as a result, it may make some sense to allow additional time to monitor the other communities that are now allowing backyard fowl and poultry. Before I get the recommendation, staff also did receive 2 letters today, which copies have been provided to council. One from Chicken Run Rescue, providing opposition to making any changes at this time, as well as one from a resident, also in opposition. So I just wanted to note that. And with that, staff is recommending that council review the options proposed, but is recommending that we hold off on any modifications to the ordinance at this time to again monitor other communities and any impacts based on them, ordinances being amended in those communities. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions at this point for staff? For Ben or anybody? Okay, yeah, Councilmember Thiede.
So do you know offhand of the different cities that now have, of the 18 or 19 that have approved it now, did they have any ordinance before? Or was this kind of like we were in 2012, kind of the first time saying, hey, well, yeah, we're going to okay it, but in 3 to 5 acres, that sort of thing?
I don't have, Mayor, Councilmember Thiede, I don't have any specific numbers, but I think it's a mixed bag where some did not, but in a lot of cases, it was kind of an incremental approach where they did allow it on larger lots like we have now and have reduced it down to the smaller residential lots.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, so again, I do know that there's some people here that want to talk, and so what I would do here, since some of you did sign up on the list out there, I'll just kind of go down the list for those that have expressed a desire to speak. And so I'll just start from the top and work our way down. So Patrick Watson? Oh, okay. Yeah, we could do that. That's fine. Okay.
Hi, I'm JJ Erasmus. I live at 6535 Genero Bay South. I want to start off with thanking Mayor and the council for their time. And to make best use of time, we asked a lot of people that were wanting to comment tonight to show their support in the hall. I would like to address and specify what we're looking for in an amendment to the current poultry ordinance. We have seen the current report and would like to voice our support for option 1, which will allow up to 4 hens or domestic ducks on single-family lots without lot size restrictions. In addition, we also want to recommend, following along with the other cities that have done that, in terms of the coop placement, right? Which means between 5 and 10 feet between the lot lines or the property lines on the sides and on the rear, as well as doing it at least 25 feet from the rear of the house or the home. Also in line with the other cities, we would also recommend a $40 application fee and then an annual fee of the same amount that, which is similar to be expected from any licensed dogs or cats, right, in the city. Following again in the footsteps of Minneapolis, we also wholeheartedly support a requirement to take a class, an introduction to poultry class, providing proof of the completion of that class at the time of application. This will ensure that soon-to-be owners of poultry have a good base of information and they really know what they're getting into, as well as that they're informed that they really want to raise poultry, like we heard earlier with that report. We have also reached out to the Dodge Nature Center, as well as their local location, the Shepherd's Farm, based out of 70th and Jamaica, where they are currently renovating, and as part of their renovations, they're adding a large run to their current coop, as part of their initiative to grow their poultry program. The farm director, Don, and I might butcher this, Oberdorfer, has graciously offered to help teach the classes that we're proposing at this local location. And he has taught many other classes of this sort at request of other cities. I mean, this is a great way to strengthen the community partnership as well as to support local business, in addition to many of the other benefits of having backyard poultry. With that, I want to hand it over to Holly's son.
Thank you, and I apologize, that was my fault for not mentioning about the up to 3 minutes, if you could, please. But yes, go right ahead. Thank you, sir.
All right, so my name's Holly Sun, and I live at 6724 Jensen Avenue South. And I'm also speaking in favor of allowing 4 domestic ducks or chickens on single-family lots without the lot size restrictions. I went over the city's report findings too, and there is some of it that I do take issue with. There wasn't any feedback from any of our surrounding communities that already allow hens. And since there wasn't any feedback, I reached out to those cities myself. And not one of those cities told me that hens were a problem. In fact, it was kind of the opposite. I reached out to Eden Prairie, Edina, Bloomington, Stillwater, Egan, Mendota Heights, Invergrove Heights, St. Paul Park, Roseville, Rosemount, and Burnsville. I received responses from mayors, police chiefs, code compliance officers, community development directors, city planners, their animal control officers, city clerks, and zoning administrators. And across the board, they stated that backyard hens were not an issue in their city. Stillwater and St. Paul Park both have stated that they have had 0 complaints since allowing hens. Stillwater said, hens are not an issue for us. Eden Prairie also stated that hens have been a non-issue. Egan said that they had only had 1 complaint since 2013 in which an owner just needed to get a permit. They also state that there doesn't seem to be any concerns from residents or the city at this time regarding hens. Mendota Heights began allowing hens in 2017. They stated 1 year later, after such a favorable report, that the city council agreed to increase their number of hens from 4 to 6. Invergrove Heights has had urban chickens for 8 years, and they can only recall receiving 1 complaint in those 8 years after some chickens escaped their coop. They state neighbors will often voice concerns that they're afraid that a coop will attract coyotes or fox, that it will smell, or that it will be loud, but none of those concerns have come to fruition. Burnsville and Edina also no longer require permits for their hens. Edina says they only receive 2 to 3 calls a year related to hens, and Burnsville says the city has no concerns at this time related to hens. And finally, Bloomington reports that less than 0.5% of all of the animal complaints they get are related to chickens. I was frankly a little bit disappointed in this report. The map that was displayed earlier is not up to date of all of the cities that currently allow hens. There was one anonymous realtor's opinion, which I would hope there would have been a variety of realtors so we can get, just what everyone's experience was. And there was the opinion of the operator of one controversial chicken sanctuary. The report also states a con for allowing hens is that when hens lay eggs once a day in the morning in their coop, that it is the volume of standard human conversation. I'm sure many of you have heard lawnmowers going at 7 a.m., and I'm sure that's much worse than people talking. I'm hoping for a decision tonight that is based on the facts and the feedback from our surrounding communities. Our neighboring communities are the proof that we need that while there might be some preconceived notions about what allowing hens in the suburbs would look like, those concerns are not supported by fact. The facts and the feedback are what decisions should be based on. In conclusion, based on the information I was easily able to obtain, I would urge you to move forward with option number 1, which is to allow 4 chickens on our residential lots without lot size restriction. And we do want, just to note, single-family lots is what we're looking forward to. But thank you for your time, you guys.
Thank you. All right, yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren Wilkinson. I reside at 9382 Jurgen Place South. Mayor, council members, it's nice to see you all again. I would like to echo my neighbors in thanking you once again for your time and consideration in this matter. I would also like to echo their concerns over the report that was presented. My main concern is the controversial chicken rescue that was reached out to. So I have some questions and some clarification points on that. First, the point of clarification that the report states that the rescue is overwhelmed with chickens. Is this because they can't find enough vegan fosters? A quick look at their website shows that they only allow vegan fosters and adopters, which I can only imagine would be a major inhibition for an organization looking to rescue. A 2015 article by the Star Tribune noted that only 2% of Minnesotans are vegan. And a lot of those people don't live in areas that can support a hen. I don't need to be vegan or vegetarian to treat an animal with kindness and respect, and I'm sure you'd all agree with that as well. Second, I'd like to know how many chickens this rescue does have in their care, and how many of those chickens are a direct result of backyard hen surrenders. I think that's an important distinction since that's what we're talking about here, and there are many ways that a chicken can end up in a rescue's care. I'd like to also air some concerns over Chicken Run Rescue. Again, a quick visit to their website, and it's not hard to see that they show an incredible bias. Why would a vegan organization advocate for egg-laying hens? They don't eat eggs. So they also show a general lack of concern for basic sanitation practices. They allow chickens in their kitchens, in their bedrooms, and in their beds. And as an advocate for chickens, that is not the kind of information I want out there. That's not sanitary, it's not safe, and it's not a good practice for the chickens or the chicken owners. And I think the last and most disturbing piece of information that I found on their website is that they state that they alter their flock with contraceptive implants to stop them from laying eggs. Why are we hormonally altering chickens other than they just don't want them to lay? They think that they should have homes, not jobs. So I think it's important to note that there are several other rescues and farms in the area that would take in hens that could no longer be cared for or that residents no longer are wanting. They include Soul Space Farm Sanctuary in New Richmond. And then there's a ton of social media groups out there that include independent farms and homeowners that are more than willing to take in hens at a moment's notice. So I would urge you to look beyond what's in this memo and see the amazing community that is poultry raising. So I guess my recommendation would be to go with number 1 as well. And I'd like to introduce Patrick.
All right, well, Mayor Bailey, members of the council, thank you for having us here tonight. My name's Patrick Watson, and I'm actually not a resident of Cottage Grove. I'm a resident of Mendota Heights. I'm here at the behest of Holly Sun and Jeff Len, who invited me to come speak to you about my experience. I was responsible for the change to a permissive chicken ordinance in Mendota Heights 4 years ago. And as Holly stated, it's been an overwhelming success. We've worked extremely closely with our community development director to craft a responsive ordinance that costs the city literally nothing. And I've read your city staff's report. I saw the concerns that were raised in that report. Those were all concerns that I saw in my own city when we first raised the issue. I empathize with my neighbors, including my direct next door neighbors, when we first raised this topic. There was a lot of uncertainty about the impacts to a permissive ordinance, a lot of uncertainty as to what was fact, what was fiction. There were people who thought roosters were necessary to get eggs, all kinds of different things. Working with city staff, our community development director, and concerned neighbors, we were able to craft a permissive ordinance and a review period that protected the quality of life of our city and still gave residents the opportunity to have a reasonable number of hens. I'm happy to report after 4 years, like I'll echo what Holly said, our city has had no bad experiences. In fact, we just had 5 of them show up on the side of the road on Highway 62. City development director called me and said, hey, we got 5 hens. I found homes for them within 15 minutes. It was not even an issue. So we're not even sure if they came from the city. There were no additional vermin. We've got 30 coops in the city. There were no additional vermin or predators. There have been no odor or noise complaints. There has not even been a single chicken at large complaint other than the Highway 62, but that can't be shown that that was from city residents. I had a former elected official actually come up to me last fall and state that she's like, that really wasn't that big of a deal after all. And I said, no, it really hasn't been. And she loves the fresh eggs she gets from her neighbors. It's a well-established activity at this point, lots of local resources. It also hasn't contributed to a spate of abandoned or orphaned chickens either. And I apologize, I didn't get your name. Lauren, what Lauren had stated, there are tons of people out there who are more than happy to take chickens. I found homes within 15 minutes. So lots of stuff. It's a great eat local resource. I've had local school groups come in, local 4-H groups, local scout groups, all look at my little backyard oasis for my chickens. I get a good source of fertilizer. I get eggs and for breakfast. They're wonderful. So I urge you to consider a simple change to a permissive ordinance. There are a substantial number of cities across the metro area that have moved to a permissive ordinance. It doesn't cost the city anything extra. It doesn't degrade the quality of life for neighbors, and it doesn't contribute to an additional burden. So thank you for your time. I can stand for any questions you have on our experience in Mendota Heights. It's been overwhelmingly positive.
Okay, any questions? Nope, thank you. All right, that was everybody that had signed up on the checklist that was out, or the sign-up sheet that was out in the entryway. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this item? All right, so seeing none, council, what's that? Yes, I was going to do that. I was going to open it up for council for comments or conversation. So did you want to make something? Or okay, Councilmember Thiede.
So number one, I think, and just to clarify, Ben, the map that you had was that was of the cities that didn't allow it before, now allow it. So it wasn't necessarily showing all the ones that allow it.
Correct.
Just as a clarification.
Yep.
So it was just of those 35, and now the 18 or 19 allow it now. One of the other things that I'd like is because I'm kind of the data guy. I like all the data and statistics. So I did like some of the things that you're bringing up. And I was wondering if we could actually get that, make sure we get that information and just kind of follow it up and so that we have that, as opposed to just hearing it, hearing it here, that we would have that to be able to take a look at and just kind of, verify and so forth. And so we have a complete picture of information.
Okay.
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you. Council, any other comments? Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight to express their opinion and share some data with us. That's very helpful because, as you might imagine, that is information that we don't deal with on a daily basis, being that we don't do the residential backyard chickens in Cottage Grove at the current time. I want to read something to you that I received recently and then comment on what I'm about to read. This says, I wanted to email you to express my disappointment in the report that has been shared regarding the keeping of backyard poultry. I'm hoping you did not spend my taxpayer dollars to put together such an ill-researched record. Honestly, a seventh grader would have put more effort into a school project than was placed into this. It feels as though you had a predetermined result you wanted and were not open to hearing any actual facts regarding the keeping of backyard poultry. Much of the data appears to be several years or up to a decade old. Your map is missing several, in parentheses, dozens, municipalities that allow backyard chickens in Minnesota. The report suggests that we wait and see how other municipalities have dealt with backyard chickens, but it does not appear to have even consulted any of them. A simple Google search yields results from our local media, including NPR and KSTP, who have actually interviewed local control enforcement and found that complaints regarding backyard chickens are very rare or non-existent. Additionally, the rescue group cited in the report is actually a far, far left vegan group that believes that chickens should not even exist and places hormone chips in their rescued chickens so that they no longer lay eggs. This information is available by simply visiting their crazy website. On the other hand, the Twin Cities Humane Society has stopped accepting chickens as their surrender was so rare, they couldn't justify maintaining training and resources to accept them. This information is available via a simple Google search and one of the many recent news articles on the keeping of backyard chickens by millennials in the Twin Cities metro area. The con portion of this report includes a brief period of noise at a human conversation level. This has to be a joke, right? The dogs allowed in Cottage Grove are allowed to be much louder than that for much longer periods of time. I have friends and municipalities as diverse as Edina, Minneapolis, and Minnetonka who have all successfully kept backyard poultry that have been a joy to themselves and to their neighbors. Property values are not affected by something as generic as whether or not your neighbor has a chicken coop, but as any competent realtor will tell you, whether or not their backyard is kept neat and tidy. A disgusting chicken coop is just as much a problem to property values as the neighbor with several dogs who does nothing to pick up their stinky mess, or another neighbor with a pool that's full of disgusting slime. We should allow anyone who wishes to keep backyard poultry on a residential lot in Cottage Grove to do so, provided they follow the same reasonable rules that we expect for the keeping of any pet, which is to say they have a reasonable number, they keep their area clean, they don't affect their neighbor through an inordinate amount of noise or smell. So I'm going to go to the end because this continues for quite a while. And this says, I hope you can see that myself as well as several of my neighbors are very passionate about this issue and how the City Council handles this very reasonable change to bring us into comportment with all of our metro neighbors is something that will affect my vote, and I will work very hard to make sure that it affects the vote of all my neighbors in the upcoming election. So I'm not going to give the name of this individual because that is not important. But I do want to address a couple things. So the idea of chickens as pets, they're not pets. They are not a domesticated animal in the same way that cats or dogs or sort of more domesticated animals are. And that's laid out in all of the ordinances that I've read from other communities. Our mayor is the president of what's called the Metro Cities Group. That is a group of all metro cities in the state of Minnesota who meet on the regular to talk about things like this. So in addition to what you see in the report from the staff, which is kind of the tip of the iceberg, we also have gotten a lot of feedback from other communities through many different avenues, including metro cities, including other communities where we know elected officials and/or members of the staff, to get updates on sort of what they're doing with this issue. And it's certainly true that there are many recently who have moved away from a more restrictive ordinance and have gone towards a more residential-friendly ordinance that the folks who spoke tonight are thinking of. The thing that we all have to remember is Cottage Grove is a community of about 40,000 people. There's a whole bunch of people here. And anytime we deal with a controversial issue, we get feedback from lots of folks. And there are generally two sides to the story, sometimes three, sometimes four, and the truth sort of lands in the middle. For those of you who are here this evening who are as passionate about this topic as you are and came to the meeting and have sent emails and letters, please remember that there are an equal number, sometimes more of a greater number of people who don't feel the way that you do. And so as members of this council, we have to take all of that into consideration, and it isn't always easy. Now, I've read every comment on the chicken Facebook group for the city of Cottage Grove. I've gone through them all several times. Some of them are very respectful, and some are not. In fact, there's quite a few that aren't. And as you probably noted from what I read earlier, some of the email communication, phone calls, et cetera, that we've received aren't necessarily very kind-hearted either. But we don't really worry too much about that. Our job is to be dispassionate and to step back from the emotion of an issue and to look at, as somebody said earlier, the facts. There are more facts about this issue than those have been presented this evening. Just as when we looked at it in 2013, and I believe this council also reviewed the ordinance somewhere in the neighborhood of 2017, 2018, when I was not on the council. I want everybody to understand that we give everything a fair hearing, everything. That's our job, and it's something that we take seriously. Speaking for myself personally, I bet you I've done more research on chickens over the last couple of months than I did when I was in college writing my term papers. God forbid I should get arrested for something and they find my search history on my computer. Somebody's gonna think I have a chicken fetish. But the reality of the situation is, this is a tough issue because I know that it is becoming more prevalent. It's becoming more common in different communities, but there are lots of people who don't like it. And I think that their opinions may be based in fear, or they may be looking at, well, what might happen? Whereas the gentleman from Mendota Heights talked about, we've done this, here's the experience that we've, that we've had over the last 4 years, et cetera. So, to wrap this up in a nice tidy little bow, from where I stand, I would like to gather more insight into what other communities have done, how it's been working. I would like to make sure that when we ultimately decide to move forward with something like this, that we do so carefully, with a deep amount of consideration, and I'm just not quite there yet. So as much as I appreciate the passion behind the issue, I also appreciate the passion from the neighbors that I've spoken to and the members of this community I've spoken to who don't feel comfortable with this as a go-forward option at this point in time. There's gonna come a day when you quit moving the ball down the field 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, and you get to the end zone and you score a touchdown. That's how it is with most things. It's how it is with most policy changes. It happens incrementally. And I think that the group that's here this evening and the group that's been so good about communicating sort of where they stand and why they stand there, I think you've moved the ball down the field quite a bit. But at this stage of the game, again, from where I stand, I'm not quite ready to move forward yet. And I would recommend that we stay with what we've got and continue to watch what happens over the next year or two and come back and talk again when we have a little bit more information about the true impacts.
Okay. Councilmember Mills.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Olson, for your thoughts. I want to share a little bit too, being in the seat and elected, very similar to some of the thoughts Councilmember Olson has in really taking a look at what's best for the whole community. I use a different word instead of dispassionate. I use disinterested. Disinterested is where you don't have anything influencing you. You set things aside. You don't have, you're trying to be impartial as much as possible on those issues and not let your own personal opinions come in, but look at those facts. And so I work really hard at looking at those different facts. And I have to say, you guys have put together really good points. You've brought forth some really good points about it. I'm all about sustainability. I'm all about trying to find things in nature that can help keep our earth in good shape, whether it's taking care of the different pests, all those different pieces. And as a mother, and my daughter's grown now, but when she was little, I was always looking for ways that I could help teach her responsibilities and all of those. So all of you that, I know many of you are mothers, you aren't all mothers. I know there's some men that are supportive of it too, but many of you are mothers and have brought that forth. After doing a lot of research and also getting emails, having family members who are farmers, having friends that have chickens, urban chickens, and also having friends that live next to people with urban chickens. I've done a lot of talking to different people, and at this point, I'm not ready to say, yes, it's right for Cottage Grove. I think we're not at that place. I think there are still some issues that need to be dealt with, and it's one of those bigger pieces of looking at the whole, and it's really hard sometimes to make that decision. So I'm not ready to move forward with it. I'm certainly open to discuss and see a little more on some of the other communities, but I've also heard some complaints, and maybe you guys didn't see that in some of your research that you did, but I'm a little concerned about that, and I think our community's not quite ready. So, but thank you so much for all your efforts. I applaud you for all of that, and you did it right. You came in, you did it right. So thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Dennis.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I think for the second time in 2 meetings in a row, I'm hitting cleanup here. So I kind of feel a little bit different on this. I've honestly had more people reach out to me that are in favor of having this opportunity. And I've taken into consideration information from our staff. I've also reached out to some of my friends who live in different cities, and I've asked them for their real-world experiences. Have you seen any issues? Are you aware of problems? I was informed that they had not seen any. I think that a tremendous amount of research has gone into this process by the folks who have worked very hard to put this together. And I do understand, and you're hearing it from different members of our council, that it's not easy to sit in these chairs. It's not easy. It's never easy. And what you do is you try to balance between the greater good and doing what's in the best interest of the largest number of people and do what's right for people. And that's kind of how I've always approached this job. So for me, looking at what was presented tonight, I'll tell you what I do like. I like the fact that there would be some annual licensure, because what that does is that keeps people with some skin in the game, so to speak. If you're paying some money, you probably would make the connection that it matters to someone. Second, I also like the training aspect. I think when people are informed in any process, and we'll probably be talking about something here in a few minutes where we want to inform people of things, when you're informed, you have a viewpoint and an understanding that allows you to do better. So I like what I'm hearing, and, you know, although I know at this moment it would be absolutely fruitless for me to make any type of a motion to bring, you know, recommendation number 1 forward. Obviously, I don't think I would even have a second on that, but at least at this moment in time, for what I've been exposed to from the people that I've heard from, and again, I've heard from more people that wanted this than not, my 20% of the vote would be to support that we would provide this opportunity for people and do it in a way that was respectful and appropriate to whatever lawful requirement we would have as an ordinance as a city. So that's where I would stand on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll do Councilmember Thiede first.
So, is my previous comment, obviously wanting some more of the information, my position right now too is, you know, I need more information. Just one other comment, you know, and I know people can't control other people a lot of times, but when people send in emails and, you know, first thing that they're doing is kind of insulting people and things like that, you know, that doesn't go very far, but it's both sides that do it, but still, just as a comment. The one thing for me, it's very important is neighbors and the people that you live around. And obviously, with some of the lots that we're getting now, I mean, even those houses are even getting closer together. You know, so part of me says that, well, hey, if you started up a whole new neighborhood and that neighborhood allowed chickens from the start, then everybody moving in there would be, you know, saying, hey, they allow chickens. So then people would be okay with it. Anytime somebody brings in a change that we have to you know, make a exception for or something of that nature, it's always, for me, it's you know, how many of the neighbors actually come in and say, well, here's my opinion. If a bunch of neighbors come in and say, well, I don't like that or something like that, then we're kind of infringing on people that were somewhere that weren't expecting to have to deal with certain things. I mean, very similar, like we were talking about, you know, Cedarhurst before, and people saying, well, you know, I wasn't expecting to see this, you know, huge high rise or something like that next to me when I bought my property that's $500,000 or whatever they are over there now, right? So that's kind of what matters to me. But like these guys said too, is you got to try to take the emotion out of it. You got to try to say, you know, and I being an engineering background, I like looking at all the data and comparing that and things like that. So I'm actually kind of on the fence a little bit, so to speak, not to coin a phrase, but kind of on the fence, and I definitely want to see what some more information and things like that. So,
Councilmember Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as I said earlier, you know, what you see sort of depends on where you sit. And if you're for something, you're for it, you're passionate about it. If you're not in favor of something, you're passionate about that position. You know, one of the things that we have at our disposal that I feel very grateful for is we have advisory commissions in the city of Cottage Grove. So I don't know if everybody in the audience knows this, but we have several advisory commissions in the city that are made up of volunteer residents. In fact, I think everybody up here started in city government as a advisory commissioner. I myself was a commissioner for what used to be called the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Commission for 4 years before running for council. And it's a really, really good way to dip your toe in the water of city government and understand how it works, get to know some of the folks at City Hall, and also influence what's going on in your community. When it comes to zoning and planning and that sort of thing, we have a planning commission. I think you heard my colleague, Councilmember Dennis, talk about that earlier. So something that I might recommend, Mayor, that isn't necessarily in the mix of these recommendations is you know, taking into consideration the fact that the folks here in the audience, and in particular, I want to point out Holly, because she's been just really, really good about continuing to follow up, and we've talked on the phone, and she sent several emails, and you know, she's helped me to move my opinion to some degree with respect to this issue, because, you know, again, this is not something that really falls within my scope of expertise, but certainly something that she knows quite a bit about. And I'm grateful for that. So perhaps something that we might think about, and I'll ask for feedback from the rest of the council on this, is as opposed to making a decision on this evening and saying yes or no to, one of these options, perhaps in the interest of gaining more insight and allowing for a more robust public conversation, do we send this as an issue to our planning commission and ask our planning commission to really kind of peel the onion a little more, dig a little deeper, gather some insight? It also provides those who support the idea of poultry on residential lots to spend some additional time informing the public. One of the things that stuck out to me when Holly and I spoke on the phone the first time is she said, I really think this comes down to education. Do you remember telling me that? Yeah. And I think you're spot on in that. The gentleman that spoke earlier, I'll get the name wrong. Was it TJ? JJ. Okay. So make sure to express my apologies to your mother for getting your name wrong. But, he talked quite a bit too about the educational component. And that may be an opportunity for the Planning Commission to look a little more into what folks want, what other communities are doing, how they're doing it, whether they're doing it effectively, and then provide us with a recommendation based on feedback from the public. That way, the recommendation that comes to us doesn't necessarily just come through staff. It actually comes through your neighbors and people who live in the community and want to do the right thing, just like we do for all the residents of this community. And it provides with another layer of education. So just a thought.
Okay.
I would also suggest public services.
Council Member Thiede.
I would also suggest public services and looking at the health aspect and things like that.
Okay. Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. The only reservation or concern I have on kicking that back down to commissions is that we're all very well aware from a standpoint of process that the commissions vote on findings of fact. And those findings of fact are staff-led. So, whether it be research, whether it be information relative to our current codes, whether it be certain legal matters, whatever. And the commission members have to really kind of stay within those lines, and we know that. We know that. So I very much appreciate the thoughtful and kindly idea of doing that. And again, I've got 20% of the vote up here. The one thing I would like to do, just for the record, so that we've got something here on paper, is I would like to make a motion. If you're okay with me doing that,
That's
I'll
fine.
call a motion. And then the process for the folks here and watching at home is that there would need to be a second on that motion in order for us to have a vote here. So, Mayor, I would like to make motion that we approve option number 1. And I want to add into that that staff could wordsmith in some requirements to define what licensure mechanisms we would have. I would recommend it would be an annual process. And then also that we assign a training opportunity to this so that people are educated and informed and know exactly what they're required to do. I'm aware that folks wanted to see this thing happen. It takes a certain maturation time before chickens are to a certain age and they're weather hardy for winter and that type of thing. So that's been something that's been mentioned here on a number of occasions and in research. So this would be my recommendation, and I would ask formally for you to call for a second for me.
Okay. So we have a motion as stated by Councilmember Dennis. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Councilmember Olson. Any further discussion? I guess since I haven't had the chance to speak, I'll definitely do that now. I am not there yet. I'm not and I appreciate, especially from you, Holly, all the information that you have shared with us. Councilmember Olson made a comment earlier about, conversations that we have. And whether it's with neighbors, whether it's with other city officials, I have the opportunity in my role in a couple different president's roles and things like that outside of being the mayor of Cottage Grove, to talk to some other mayors, including some of the city's mayors that were brought up earlier today, that actually come, and I'm not saying that there's any misinformation out there, but the messaging is different. So whether I'm being told one thing and you're being told another, I don't know, but I'm going into it with, asking the same thing. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What's your staff telling you? Is there these issues? Whatever. So put aside even the chicken run thing. I mean, that was a couple years ago, to be honest with you, when they first came about. And obviously, they have their own philosophies on what's going on with chicken run. But the point of the matter is, I have also had numerous citizens contact me that said, don't you dare let, kind of like if you want the implied threat, if you will, on the other side where, you either give us chickens or we're gonna vote at the ballot box. So I've had it on the other side too, where they said, so I take all that, which was mentioned up here, and I just say, that's not why I'm here. I'm here as mayor to represent the city of Cottage Grove and its citizens, and I have to make the best decision I possibly can. At some point, will we get chickens, in some urban areas within Cottage Grove? Probably, at some point in time. I don't know that we're there yet. At least I don't think we are. And I would just state that my concern, and I've shared this actually with staff, put aside the HOA situation, because I have had certain people reach out to me that want chickens and then found out where they live, and they live in an HOA that doesn't allow chickens. So they're not gonna be able to have chickens anyway, because just so the public knows, when an HOA goes in, or they don't, the HOA supersedes the city. So if the city says, yeah, you can do this, and the HOA says, no, you can't, we have somebody that's on a board of an HOA. As a matter of fact, he's got some people in his neighborhood that made a comment that they wanted chickens. Well, they can't because the HOA doesn't allow it.
Actually, they're not supposed to have the signs.
I know, and I saw that too. I heard about that too. So I am not there yet. And maybe at some point in time, but it's not today. So I would vote no for the option that was presented. And then before I do, see if there's any other comments and then call for the vote. I would also, the comment that Councilmember Dennis brought up is a valid comment about if we kick it back to the commission. We just had this almost identical situation with the Mississippi Dunes Park, where the Parks Commission, where we asked them for information about a park on the island or down at the Mississippi Dunes, and they didn't want to make a decision because they said they wanted the council to give them direction, which we have now to that. I think what we're doing here is we're saying we're not there yet. There's I think still some more work that needs to be done, and talking about through whether it's densities and, hens and all that. And I do think that there's a big important piece to education, I really do, because just to be honest with you, if I went to all three neighbors around me, and every single one of them said no, okay? Now, that might just be a fear factor, but that is what was stated around me. So with that, yes, Councilmember Wilson.
The comment was made that, our commissions work through findings of fact, and that's accurate. I sat in a commission chair for 4 years. I'm fully aware of that. But the reason we have advisory commissions is because they get to explore these issues in greater detail in a more narrow purview than we do. As a council, we have discretion to some degree. We can't go too far outside the lines, otherwise the city attorney gets a little cranky with us. But we do have some discretion. But, we have a planning commission that deals with planning issues. We have a public services commission that deals with public services issues, whether that's public safety or public works. We have a parks commission that deals with parks-related issues. And the reason we have those advisory commissions is because they can ask questions and gather data that they can then provide to us via a recommendation once they feel like they've fully explored the depth of a given issue. As I said earlier, and as Holly eloquently shared with me in our phone call, that educational piece is so critical. And I think some of the reason we are hearing feedback from other residents of this community of 40,000 people who say, chickens, are you crazy? I don't want chickens, is because they may not fully understand or grasp what exactly backyard hens means. They just don't know. They're thinking about, a farm in the middle of North Dakota with a big building and, any of us who've ever worked on a farm, and trust me, I spent plenty of time on a farm, growing up is, chicken coops attract some critters. But that's not what we're talking about here. So the reason I made the recommendation about sending this to the Planning Commission or Public Services Commission, whoever we feel is appropriate, is because I think that provides ongoing public dialogue between the folks in the audience tonight and the folks who represent the city as volunteer commissioners, so that those commissioners can then say, okay, staff, you put this in your report. I'm hearing this from the folks who are advocating for this particular change. Can you give me a little more information? Can you do a little more research? Can you dig in a little deeper? Now, we could certainly do that here, but the commissions are specifically made to do that. We've done it for years. Road widths is a great situation to share with people where, when we used to do developments used to go to every single commission. Now they only go to the Planning Commission. They used to go to the Public Works Commission. They used to go to the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Commission. And every commission had to give their input on, do we like this development? What parts of this development are we concerned about? What things do we want to discuss? One of the big controversial topics was road widths. If you live on the Thompson Grove side of the highway where I grew up and where the mayor grew up, and you go to Hamlet Park and you drive down Hamlet, it feels like you're driving down a freeway because it's so stinking wide. Whereas a lot of these developments that we have in place today have extremely narrow road widths. Lot sizes are changing. These are things that are getting pushed through the Planning Commission, but there's no input from the other commissions. And so there was a day when we really put a lot of emphasis and faith in our commissioners, and I'd like to think we could do that with this issue as well. So to the mayor's point, I will also be voting no, even though I seconded the motion, but I am still advocating that we have our Planning Commission work through this over the course of the next few months so that they can get more information, more data, and share with us what their findings and recommendation might be if we ever decide to talk about it in the future.
Okay. Any other comments at this point? All right, we're, there's a motion and a second to approve, which would have been option one, I believe. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion fails. Okay? All right. We'll move on. Thank you.
Mayor, do we need to, at some point, make a motion to send it back to the Planning Commission? Or is
Yeah,
that-
if you would want to do
Yeah,
that.
I would like to make a motion that we have the Planning Commission explore this further with the help of our staff and the advocates in the community to try to, increase our education on this topic and see where we go from here.
All right, so you made that motion. That's Councilmember Olson.
I'll second it.
And a second by Councilmember Thiede.
And I have a comment just to kind of go along with that.
And further discussion, Councilmember Thiede.
Thanks. So, yeah, and just to expand, with all our commission, and so forth, those people all have their connections out on social media and things of that nature and so forth, and personal interactions. And I think just having more information coming in, to me, is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Any other, Councilmember Dennis, I'm sorry, and then.
It's okay.
Oh, please.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I will not vote in favor of this particular motion because as we, again, being part of this for a long time and seeing and understanding and being the council liaison to the Planning Commission, the packets that generally come out of that commission is the one that comes right into our packet. The findings, everything is detailed there. I don't know really at this point what else, our members of that commission would really be able to do. I will bring up the point, and this is in consideration, and my respect for those people that are volunteers here for us. We get elected, and we get paid a little bit of money to sit up here and to take it from the community. These folks volunteer. And so one of the things that I am very considerate and respectful is if I can shield and protect them to whatever degree that I can as a councilman, so that they can come in and have a clear path. But as we all know, the world is getting more severe, as witnessed by some of the documents that were sent to us. I mean, I've been here 7 years in the chair, and I've never had somebody threaten me stepping forward to say, you're going to do what I'm going to ask you to do, or I'm going to come after you. And again, you want the chair, come have it, because there's all kinds of other stuff that goes with it. And there's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of hard decisions. And we really try to do the right thing for people. So I'm trying to do the right thing here for all the men and women who are fantastic volunteers for us. I just don't want to put them in those sites. I really don't. So that's my piece. I will be voting no on this.
Okay.
Thank you,
Councilmember
Mayor.
Mills?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to vote no, because I think our commissions, it doesn't need to go through them. I guess I would like to put out the idea, we've talked about, we're not ready, but what about doing a task force a little bit later and working with having Holly come in, some of the other folks, along with some others that maybe aren't in favor of chickens, and working together with a task force, not necessarily next week, but down the road when we're feeling we're a little closer to maybe being ready to really dive in and look at this closer. That would be what I would maybe propose. I know that's not our motion right now, but I'm not in favor of putting it to our commissions at this time.
Okay. And I mentioned my comments before about that. I think this is more of a, we've got all of our data that the staff has provided with us. I don't think, as you said, putting, whether it's Planning Commission or Public Safety, Health and Welfare Commission in the line of fire is really going to do anything. I think that's what our role is up here, to make that call, and then at some point in time, we can, recheck out and relook at the task force opportunity in the future.
Well,
Okay.
it doesn't,
Oh,
Mayor.
yeah, Councilmember Thiede.
Doesn't sound like your vote's going to go through, so I'll just rescind my second. We just don't need to spend the time on a vote.
So now you want to rescind your second?
Yep.
Okay.
That okay?
Yeah, you can do it then.
You
That's
need to
fine.
you need to do what you need to do.
Okay.
I think we could say that anything that comes before us doesn't need to go through the commissions then.
That's true.
Why do we need
There's
advisory
some.
commissioners? Just bring it to us. That's what we're here for. That's what we get paid a little bit of money to do.
I will say, though, there are certain things, this being one of them, that really isn't in what I'll call the purview of them. Because actually, this came to us directly.
It's a proposed ordinance change.
That came to us from the public, and it didn't go back through. It came right to us here, so, okay. But that's enough, I guess.
I do have one other question.
Yes, Councilmember Thiede.
So do we have to do a vote on if we don't want to do anything with it right now to actually?
We did.
We already did.
We did that.
Yeah.
Well, no,
It
we
failed
voted
4-1.
whether we were going to do number one. And so by not doing number one,
We're,
voting
staff's
that down, we're not
recommendation,
doing anything?
staff's recommendation is
Is
that we don't do
is that
anything.
how that works?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda this evening, which is D, and that is the Community Center Referendum Question Resolution. And I believe, Zach, you're on the docket here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. You've heard me say it before, but after lots and lots of study, community engagement, and a lot of hard work developing concept plans for a community center, tonight I present to you the final report that gives the council the option for a resolution to authorize a ballot at the November 2nd, 2021 election for voter consideration of a community center. The project history is deep, but the highlights, some of the highlights included here include in 2005, the recreational facility study identified a community center as a future need. We had been hearing that well prior to that, but that was kind of the first kickoff. An independent study had showed a future need for a community center. In 2009, a community center task force was convened following the community survey. And in 2011, the task force report was finalized and approved by council. And then in 2012, residential community survey on community center and YMCA concepts netted a positive response. Also in 2012, the city council ultimately delayed the community center project in response to the economic downturn, considering that that might not have been the best time financially to move forward with the community center. So moving further down the line, 2017, the economy is approved. We did the My Future Cottage Grove reports, which showed a strong desire for community center, one of the top 5 items listed in that report. In 2018, another community center task force was formed and submitted a final report recommending the community center as a central gathering and unifying space for the community. In 2019, a feasibility study was authorized by City Council, and in 2020, that feasibility study was accepted. That was an independent study performed by Leo A. Daly. As a result of accepting that feasibility study, a November 2020 referendum vote was scheduled. 2020 was obviously the COVID-19 pandemic. The council made the wise decision to delay asking voters to take a position on a community center at that time, waiting to see how the economy would fare after the pandemic. And then in 2021, council authorized the community center to staff to move forward with advising on a community center referendum. So the concept design includes the following items: an indoor playground, community multi-purpose rooms, sports dome with walking track, outdoor aquatic center, a climbing wall, a small performance space, early childhood family education center, Cottage Grove Athletic Association office and storage space, outdoor landscaped areas, and connection to the Ravine Regional Park. And the concept design is before you on the right side of this slide. The site description, it is located down at East Point Douglas and County Road 19. The community center will be 22,000 square foot building. The sports dome will be 110,000 square foot building with turf, indoor turf. There's future partnerships or expansion opportunities of 30,000 square feet on the site. The aquatic center requires about 2.5 acres, and then there's also about 2.5 acres of parking included on the concept plans. The facility budget in terms of construction costs. Community center building is about $5.3 million. Outdoor aquatic center is $14.6 million. Sports dome is $4.5 million. Site acquisition and development about close to $4 million. Soft costs around $7 million, and then a contingency of about $2.5 million for both design and construction. Escalation factor is important given the current economy, so that's at 4.5% or $1.4 million. Total capital costs projected for the project is $39.2 million. And just a reminder that we are in the we are still in the concept phase, so those budget numbers, although what you're getting tonight will be what goes to the voter referendum, everything still is in concept phase, so that's why there's a large contingency there and escalation factor. It's important to note that those are capital costs only. There are operational costs that will be incurred each year for operating the facility. We anticipate, based on the market study that was provided by Ballard and King, about $100,000 to $250,000 annual subsidy required to maintain day-to-day operational costs. That equates to about $1 per month per homeowner. It does not include any expansion, renovation, or major capital or reconstructive capital work that might be required with the building. So 10, 20 years down the road, if there's major reconstruction, it does not include those items. Those figures kind of come from some operational cost recovery projections. Common spaces are only going to recover about 15% just through random rentals. Some of the leased spaces, we would expect 75 to 100% cost recovery. Indoor playground, 75 to 100% cost recovery. Outdoor pool, 75 to 100% cost recovery. And the same thing with the sports dome, 75 to 100% cost recovery. Once again, covering operational costs only, not capital. And a lot of that comes down to staffing needs. In order to operate, you need a lot of staff. Full-time staff, there's about 6 positions that we would expect full-time staff community center manager, program coordinator, program aquatics, director, administrative assistant, maintenance worker, custodian. Those could change over time depending on the final design of the facility. And then there's about 100+ positions of part-time seasonal staff that we would need: lifeguards, building attendants, programmers, concessions, custodial, things of that nature. Funding sources would be from general obligation bonds as authorized by voters, that would have to be authorized by voters on November 2nd, 2021 at the election. The community center tax impact for capital and debt service only on a home of $300,000 would be on $39.2 million capital costs would be $167, and per month that would be $14 per month per household. Capital debt service only. Some of the project partners we're working with to reduce operating costs are, we've got some memorandums of understanding with Independent School District for Early Childhood Family Education Center, and also for use of the sports dome with their athletic programs. The Southeast Metro Swim Club is interested in leasing space for the 50-meter pool. We are looking for some capital support as well and partners. As the mayor mentioned earlier, we are working for working towards a $3 million state bonding capital application request for the 50-meter pool. We are looking looking for some federal funding requests for infrastructure costs, and then sponsorships and donations are also going to be sought after as well. Project timeline: we worked with Kraus Anderson to identify a reasonable timeline. Full construction would take approximately 18 months to complete. Kraus notes that there is the potential to prioritize some items over others, and there might be opportunities to have a phased opening, but essentially, full construction would take 18 months to complete. With all the design time ahead of that, which would have to happen, nothing would happen until after November 2nd, we'd be talking about a full community center opening by fall of 2024. The communication plan is extremely important. Just like the topic we talked about before, we need to make sure that we educate residents to the nth degree. We have a 5-page communication plan that lists all the different events and opportunities and social media events and how we're going to get out in touch with the people and tell them what the community center is so that when they go to the polls, they're educated. Whether they vote yes or no is not our business. It's to make sure they understand what they're voting on and can make an educated decision. So we'll have walk and talk events. We'll have live Facebook events. Mayor's Moments have already started. Cottage Grove reports articles, social media recaps, community group outreach. We'll be talking to some of the larger employees who can have direct contact with hundreds of employees. In any other ways we can think of. So, and we're continuing to keep those lines of communication open. So as the council has ideas or thoughts, please let us know, and we're willing to do what it takes to get the word out. We will have a community center website that is actually developed right now. It's not live. It'll have aggregated content with detailed information on for one single source. So links to data, photos, timelines, videos, additional correspondence. It's a Spark page with a historical timeline of all the events, so it shows people that we've been working on this a long time, right? It's not just, we didn't just come up with a $39.2 million community center, that this has been a long process, and we're giving the voters the opportunity to have an impact on it. And of course, it has contact email for questions and input, and staff will be assured to get back to people as soon as possible with whatever information they might need. And here's a video to show the community center concept. So we heard loud and clear from the council that we want to make sure that what we put forth to the taxpayers who are going to be voting on this, that they know what they're voting on. Hopefully that snippet of that video expresses some of the work we've done so far, and we have a lot of work to do yet. So tonight, the council is being asked to authorize a referendum question. The question is before you. You've had time to look at it. The City of Cottage Grove is asking for voter approval to issue and sell its general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $39.2 million for the acquisition, design, construction, and betterment of a community center. That will include an aquatic center, playground areas, and a sports dome. Community center will provide opportunities for the arts, recreation, aquatics, athletics, community program, and events. And then essentially the second part just says, shall the City of Cottage Grove issue and sell its general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $39.2 million for those same items. So the council action, the action for the City Council tonight is to consider adopting a resolution for community center referendum question to be issued at the November 2nd, 2021 election. And I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Zach, and thanks for sharing with the public and ourselves the informational video. One of the things, and then I'll obviously council can jump in and comment. In the past, and I noticed that you put down there 2005. I know that we've been actually it's been before 2005, but really talking about doing something in Cottage Grove since 2005. Of some significance. And I don't recall if Councilmember Olson can remind me when we went to referendum.
2012.
So in 2012, we went to referendum. Wasn't something like this. It was, I think, an outdoor water park.
It was an outdoor water park, and then there were
some land,
a couple
and
other questions too, Hamlet Park, et cetera.
Yeah, and so there was
we got thumped.
Yeah, and it did. And one of the things, though, I think that was really, I think what we learned from that is we needed to really show the public, here is what we're talking, here is literally the breakdown for the costs. And what's interesting about this particular proposal is when you really think about it, not that long ago, a couple years ago, we started with truly, I'd say, just a community center. And I want to say, you know what I mean, just the building. And then we heard from athletic groups and such that they wanted a dome or somewhere where they didn't have to leave Cottage Grove like they're currently doing to do indoor type sports and opportunities, walking tracks and so on. We heard that from our seniors. And so that was added. And then we're about ready to get to a referendum question. And then the public really came at us about, hey, we want water. We want some type of a water feature. And so we then went kind of back to the drawing board and said, okay, here's what we're at. Now, I do know there's still some people out there that want an indoor water park. There is a significant difference in price, both for what the taxpayers would have to pay, let alone the subsidy, which I've had a couple people ask me that question, hey, what's the difference between the two? And it is significant with an indoor water park to an external. So one of the numbers that you shared for what the cost to operate, in that range of, I think you said 100,000 to 250, whatever. The fact is, with some of the cities that I've spoken with, some of their mayors and that, they're, with the indoor water parks, it's well over $1 million a year in actual expense. So there is a significant difference. So what we were trying to do, at least what I think, and I'll speak for myself, I guess, in this case, is to provide the public with as close to an ideal situation with what we've been told that they want, but still being cognizant of the cost and the effect on the taxpayer. So that is why we're here where we are today, and that's why we're putting this question to the voters. My last comment on that would be, one of the things that I've always lived by, personally speaking, as mayor and council prior, is I look at my role as kind of two things. One is my role is to identify wants versus needs. Needs are something that I'm required as the mayor and we're as a council to, public safety, health and welfare of the community, public works, getting into streets plowed and repaired. That is really our role to do that. When it comes to something like this is a want. And so it's really up to the public, I think, to say, hey, you know what? I'm okay with you raising my taxes to build this because this is something I want. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there as that. Now, do I support this project? I do. I do support the project. I think it would be really nice to have a nice gathering place in our community. We've been hearing for years, including my time growing up here, about the needs in our community. But this will be ultimately up to the voters to make that call. So I appreciate all the work that staff has done, this council, previous councils, the community and their engagement. And I guess, obviously, I support the referendum question, and then I'll just see if there's other council comments. Yeah, I'll start with Councilmember Dennis.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And I also echo the thanks that the mayor has for everybody who's been involved in this project. It's been a long and winding road, just like that lazy river would be if this comes to fruition. A long road to get to where we are now. So when I look back on this and I think about, community engagement that I've had all the way back to 2014 when I ran for election, is there were people asking, for this as a chance for us to have a place where people could gather. So there really are 3 things from my perspective, and I just speak for myself, that are really, really important. And number one is that we have done a very viable job of listening to people, of listening to the ideas and considerations and wants that they had, while also trying to put together a product here that would be something that we could potentially afford to do, which is important. Number 2 is because of the size of this and what this means for the future of our community from a financial standpoint, it was very important to me that we got this out to the voters, to let the people have the opportunity to say whether they wanted it or not, and not just have it be something that the council pushed forward. The last piece of this is in dealing with people in a very upfront fashion. The last workshop that we had, I utilized some words, talked about transparency, I talked about honesty, and I talked about integrity of process. And I know that, Zach, in your presentation here, you're talking about the desire of the staff to make sure that we're getting information out there as part of an educational piece. So what my reinforcement on that is, I had a conversation with our City Administrator Levitt, and she used the term direct the staff, which is what I'm doing right now for my 20%, to make sure that and really was that we've given people all the data and all the information that they would need in order to make what I will call an informed choice. An informed choice is always the right choice. So of the costs that we have relative to this, and I'm just going to go through them very quickly as I understand them at this point. The very first piece is the finance piece, and that's what Jennifer called in quotes the mortgage. So this is going to be $39.2 million, and what we will do is we will seek the approval or denial of the public by virtue of vote to define on if they want to fund this. So we've got that piece that's out there that we'll have to pay for. Second to that comes the financing aspect of this. So if you think about, and I talked with the mayor and we talked about the example of buying a car, you get that very long document and it's got all those truth in finance and cost, numbers that are on there and things that you have to sign or initial, if you want this, if you want that, or if you're passing on something. But ultimately what that does, that leads us to a bottom line. So the financing piece of this, historically, we've financed our facilities at a 20-year note. And that's our industry standard here, 20 years. There had been, in the workshop, there had been an indication that maybe they wanted to go to 30 years. So here's the thing, and again, now to be truthful and upfront with people, what I always advocate for, and this is just me on how I run my finances and how I would accord my business matters, is I like to take out a shorter loan if I can, because the longer I stretch that out, the more I'm going to pay in financing charge, and that's a fact. So what ultimately, if we added an extra 10 years onto that, and this will be a decision that we'll make as a group here depending upon what happens with this, but it would add a lot of additional cost factor on there. And I think the number when I asked Robin was $11.8 million. And so to put that in perspective, that amount of money would pay for our central fire station, our extended fire truck that we just bought, and probably a couple ambulances on top of that. So we're talking about a lot of money, and I think it's important that as stewards, we work to ensure that we're structuring the best deal financially for people should this pass. The next piece I'll mention is our operations and our cost of operations. So if you think about the basic things, like you had outlined, Zach, there's going to be a number of full-time staff. We're going to have to heat, to cool, to power the place, put on programming, right? All those things are going to add to a bottom line that at some point, we as a community are going to have to assess people for, right, through the virtue of tax, and that would be considered as an amenity, not, like the mayor said, a need versus a want, that type of thing. And then last but not least is the maintenance piece of this. So you had talked about, looking at the sports dome, and I want to come back onto that particular piece because that's the only piece of this to me that really sticks out as the potential of knowing how often or how many times we're going to have to replace that dome. So I think very early in some of our conversations and workshops, maybe 2 years ago, we had talked about the fact that due to the severe environment that we have here with the cold in the wintertime and the extreme heat in the summer, that this might have a service life of somewhere around 15 years. I think that was your best guess estimate on that. So as we look at that particular piece of it, we would also want to know and understand that even if we do the 20-year note, we still might find ourselves in a situation relative to having to replace that aspect of it. And probably 15 years down the line, my guess would be that that might cost a little bit more money in the future than it did now. So if your numbers in your prospectus are accurate, that you would have, maybe some money we could set back, enough to cover the replacement of that type of thing, it certainly would be an important thing to do, because otherwise, as you know, that will have to be paid for by the community as well. So ultimately, my role in sharing this information here, I'm not advocating for, I'm not advocating against, I'm advocating for being transparent, to give people the pieces and the knowledge to know that there's 4 things that you have to think about, not just the question itself. And I think we do that and we work hard through this educational piece. I want to give that as a gift to the community and to ourselves, knowing that we did the right thing relative to letting people know so that they could make the right choice for them. So that's what I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. So back in 2016, when I ran for election, one of the things I heard a lot about was community center. And one of the things I talked a lot about with members of the community was, okay, let's take a look at this. Let's see what kind of feasibility it would be, and at this time. I knew it had been looked at previously, and there had been a task force. So once I was elected, and then about a year or 2 later is when we moved forward with that task force. So I was a part of that task force. Many community members worked really hard on that task force to help pull things together. I know, Zach, you were part of that, to bring things together. We heard from the community through all the different pieces out in the community. So thank you to everybody who contributed to that. Thank you to the staff for all the work they did. We then worked with consultants, and we came up with kind of what we have now. So now we're at that point, and it's like, oh, here we are. We're finally here. Here's the referendum question to be presented. So it's very exciting. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. My comment or my extra piece I want to bring to is it's beautiful, it's fun, people are going to love it. People look at it and go, wow, that's fantastic. My comment is kind of what my colleague was saying here. Knowing what all the information is with the numbers, how is it going to impact somebody in their home? If this does pass, what is that going to look like for all those numbers? Because it's not just the 39.2 million. It's also beyond that. You've got the operating costs, you've got the maintenance of the buildings, and the interest within that. So there's a lot of costs involved. And so I'm for bringing this to the voters, because this is what we work towards. There's many community members that wanted to work towards this, but I want to kind of echo making sure we get all of the information out to our community so that they can make a really informed decision, because we have beautiful pieces put together and we need to have just all that piece behind it. So thank you, though, for everyone who's done all this work so far. And I know everybody up here has worked really hard to get to this point. So I will be supporting the referendum question. So those are my words.
Councilmember Olson?
Thank you. Zach, will you please go back to the staffing slide? And while you do that, we've actually had 2 community center task forces in the course of the last 10 years, one of which was 20-some members strong. And that task force put together a concept that was then shared with a select number of voters via a phone survey in the city of Cottage Grove, where they talked about, how much more would you be willing to pay to have a community center in the city of Cottage Grove? And then also asked for support. And at that time, about 72%, give or take, supported the idea of a community center via the phone survey. That did not translate to a positive outcome at the ballot box in 2012. And I think what we learned from that was what you're bringing forward tonight, which is the educational piece. I think at that time, we were under some different leadership, and we did things a little cheaply in terms of trying to educate the public on exactly what they were voting for. And as you know, if somebody's unclear about what it is they might be voting for, the likelihood is they're going to vote no. This is clearly a much improved effort. So kudos to you and the team. Before I comment on this slide, can you walk me through what the public process was for this to ultimately get us to this place? I know we mentioned a task force. What else? What other public process was there?
So started off with the task force. We had about 15 citizens work through that. That was an entire year's process. Visited other communities, talked with other communities with community centers. We did a Facebook poll. I think we did 2 different Facebook polls on 2 different topics, what people want to see in the community center. We actually did a module program where we went out to Hy-Vee, Cub Foods, and actually allowed people to build what they thought a community center should look like, just taking Legos essentially and building their community center. We attended many community group meetings, Lions clubs, church groups, and things of that, and all sorts of groups. Over a dozen of those for sure. I'm probably missing some things.
Did it go through any of our commissions?
Went through all the commissions, as
Oh,
I
it did?
understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at some point in the process.
Okay, all right, just checking. All right, so staffing needs. If I just do a little rough math in my head, community center manager, program coordinator, program aquatics director, admin assistant, maintenance worker, custodian, let's just imagine that the average salary of those people is $50,000. Just because it's easy for me to do math that way. I went to Park. So if I do that right, that's about $300,000 right there. Now let's look at the part-timers. Head lifeguards, supervisors, attendants, reception, customer service, adult programming, youth programming, aquatics programming, custodial and concessions. I realize that this is a smattering of people. So you're gonna have several building supervisors and attendants. You're gonna have several people working in custodial positions and concessions positions, part-timers, similar to what we do with some of the park programming in the summer. So just for the sake of argument, let's say that we've got 300,000 in full-time, and just, we'll cut it in half, 150 grand for the part-timers. So that's $450,000 in operating alone with these positions. That's not including the heat, the electric, et cetera. So to echo what we've heard at the table here this evening, I do think the information that we share with the public has to include the fact that there is an operating component that goes along with this. And I know we talked about it in our workshop a couple weeks ago, but I just wanted to try to put a little rough math to it, because we've heard that $100,000 to $250,000 number, which is what I think you brought out initially. But as this has grown, the operating expense likely will grow as well. So it's good for us to be able to share that with folks during the course of the educational process. The 39.2 million, that's a hard number. We know that that's a not to exceed. Clearly we need to put that on the ballot, but the soft costs as they were, I think also deserve a little bit of attention. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is with regard to the public process, the outreach with the community, going through the commissions, et cetera. I think that has resulted in a much finer point on sort of the product that we're going to ultimately offer versus what we did in 2012. That was a little more of a sort of kind of versus here's what we really are looking at. So moving forward now, looking at the final product that we have in front of us, are we going back then to those groups to share this information, the kind of the finished product, to make sure that they are all able to then share with their friends, their neighbors, et cetera? Do we have a plan to share this with all the commissions? Do we have kind of a path forward to do that?
Yeah, certainly we would. We could and should do that, yes.
Okay, good, perfect. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Thiede?
Zach, can you go back to the question? So, I guess I misunderstood. I thought we were just gonna try to decide tonight whether we wanted to put this on the ballot or whatever. I didn't know we were gonna go through all the questioning and detail on education and things like that. So I maybe didn't come as prepared, but I've been involved with this since 2005 myself.
And you were actually on that commission in 2012.
That was. Yeah, and so I guess, obviously, we need to inform all the residents. I think that's a given. I think this, I agree with the mayor that this is a want and not a need. And I've always said over the last 17, 16 years or whatever, that something like this, we gotta ask the voters for. So I guess I'm obviously for putting this language on the referendum, and I think, the big part of it for the referendum is the, issuing the bonds to actually build the community center. All the other stuff leading to that is the education to make sure that the people understand what they're voting for, so.
Okay. All right.
Taking any public comment?
We're actually, well, I can let you share if you want, if you have something.
I just want to say one thing.
If you will need to go up there, sorry. Just name and address,
I would
please.
have been here at the last meeting, but I wasn't going out anywhere, but I am now. Okay, thank you very much. Bonnie Matter, 6649 Inskip Avenue South, Cottage Grove. My comment on this, the only problem that I have with this, I think this is a great idea. I know how much everyone has worked on this. It's been a long time coming. It's great for the community, et cetera. But I've educated myself about this facility, reading old documentation and, all of this kind of stuff. And the big deal has always been the indoor swimming pool. That's what it's been all about. That's always been number one as far as I've seen. And I just don't feel it's very transparent when you just say aquatic center. I'd like you to say outdoor aquatic center. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Okay. So just, I guess we've got the question the way it is, but the only other comment I'd mention, though, I just want to make sure that we're all clear. One of the things, since I've been mayor is wanting to be very transparent on everything, whether it's building this building that we did, fire trucks, all that kind of stuff, anything we do, and providing, like you just did, providing input. I think all the information that we're going to send out and the information up to this point has been that it's, I know there was a desire to do an indoor water park. Believe me, we have looked at every, and so there's a significant cost to the taxpayer if we try to do an indoor water park. And it actually, it even kind of goes back to a conversation Councilmember Dennis mentioned about the dome. We actually even went and looked and spoke with a company that would build something that wouldn't be a dome. It would actually be, matter of fact, we even talked about the glass enclosure over the water park, which you never know, someday that could happen. But that's, again, a significant increase to the cost. And so that's why we wanted to be as transparent about these different prices and the pieces of it. Matter of fact, I believe that the actual water park feature of this makes up about half the cost of this facility. So that's why it's so expensive compared to where it started from. But I also wanted to say from the financial side of things is I trust Robin and I trust our, look at her, look at me there. I do trust you, Robin. I trust Robin, I trust our staff to make sure that whatever the best opportunity for funding opportunities with this, and I'm talking about whether we go out for additional revenue, you know, through the state and some of the things, Zach, you're bringing up. Our goal is to get the cost down, whether it's the bond price down or the cost to operate. I'm 100% in favor of that because obviously, you know, whatever happens once the referendum, say it passes, it's going to be, you know, up to us up here and the staff to build it and then maintain it and look at the future, what that means, like additional expansion or whatever happens to that. So totally understand, but I did want to make sure that the public is keenly aware that, you know, our staff, even up to just last week, where we were having a conversation at a workshop where our staff has been, okay, what about, is it, you know, 20 years, 30 years, 25 years? Do we build it in phases to, you know, the other thing I just want to mention, I guess to the public too, is we always do what I'll call the, and this is a positive, but we do what I consider the worst case scenario. Because we don't want to go to the voters and say, you know, it's X amount of dollars, and then it's much higher than that. And I'm not even talking about the bond or the referendum. So we always I think, err on the high side because it's important for us to, you know, we're the stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, so we need to make sure we're careful with that, so. All right, so with that, yes, Councilmember Mills.
I'm just going to mention, I think Ms. Matter just bring up a good point about possibly adding an outdoor aquatic center. I don't know if that might be maybe appropriate or no. I'm looking at Corey.
Yeah, Your Honor, members of the council, we did have, as you know, a very lengthy discussion at the work session about the wording. And bond counsel weighed in on the more specific you are in the words that you choose, the more limited you are on how you can use the funding. And so that's why we intentionally sort of took away the adjectives surrounding some of the categories, so that should you miraculously be able to use unexpected funds and you don't have to use all of the anticipated funds for bonding, you might be able to explore other opportunities that you wouldn't have been able to use otherwise.
Okay.
So it's intentionally vague.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we have before us then a resolution to move forward. I'll just look for a council to make a motion in a second.
I guess I'll make the motion to put the referendum question shown. What do you want me to read?
The bottom, just to be official.
Okay. I would adopt Resolution 2021-081, approving the community center referendum question to issue general obligation bonds on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot.
All right, so I have a motion by Councilmember Thiede. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Mills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks.
All right, next on our agenda this evening is council comments requests. I will start like I normally do with Councilmember Mills.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep it short. Just want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. May it be safe and enjoy time with friends and family.
Well, that was quick and easy. There you go. Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, he's been sitting in the back, maybe thinking he came in easy tonight because Pete's not here.
Oh, Randy, you're in trouble now.
Deputy Public Safety Director Randy McAllister, would you mind coming up to the podium? It's a good thing. Okay. So I called you up tonight. I want to just spend a quick moment talking a little bit about the summer safety camp that we're going to have coming up. And I know it's an opportunity to get kids of varying ages to come out, and we're going to have our entire public safety group be involved in part of that. And I think even maybe, is it Washington County that's going to come and assist with a little bit?
so, yes.
Okay. Could you spend just 20 seconds just giving a brief overview of what this does and what it provides as opportunity?
I haven't seen the particulars in terms of the agenda yet, but typically the police department and the fire department are very involved, obviously. We try to make it fun, first of all, for the kids that are there, and to give their parents a break from the kids, right? But we really focus a lot on, a lot of things related to safety. We do fire safety, we do safety around electricity, for instance, which is a big one for kids. On the police side, we do demonstrations with K-9 typically every year. When the opportunity arises, we'll even bring in the State Patrol helicopter to show the kids, and that's always sort of a big hit. But, the big thing is to just make those relationships with the kids, whether it's police or it's fire, making those relationships and putting a face to those names so that the kids, when they see us on the street, they're, we're like friends to them. So, so it's a fun thing. We usually have plenty of police officers volunteering every year, and I know the fire department is all on board too, so. Should be, I don't have the exact dates in front of me.
I do have the date. It's July 27th.
All right.
And it's from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And I think there's a limitation of 50 kids that can sign up for this. So it's a really great thing. I've come and spent some time there in the past, and there's never been a better moment than right now to talk about creating relationships and opportunities to draw people together. So I do apologize for calling you up here unannounced, but I do want to reward you, sir. So would you please come over here? I have a donation that I would like to make on behalf of myself personally and my wife to Safety Camp. We've done this in the past. And if you'd be so kind to make sure that that gets passed forward so that Robin can record that properly, it would be fantastic. So that's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the donation.
My pleasure.
Hey,
Awesome.
Randy. You should come this way too, because our Lions Club made a donation to Safety Camp, and I have the check for you. This got authorized last night for $100. Yep, you bet.
Randy's going to come more often if we keep handing him money. Next time Pete says he wants something, he's going to send Randy in. Councilmember Olson, and then you. I'm sorry, since you were doing it, I didn't know. Councilmember Thiede.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay, Councilmember Olson?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, huzzah, huzzah for our Park High baseball team, who will be competing for the state championship Friday night, 7 o'clock at Target Field against the hated Farmington Club. And I look at Robin because she spent a lot of years in Farmington, so I'm not sure where her loyalty lies. Zach, get her a green shirt, would you? Appreciate that. This team has really played some great baseball all year. They were seeded second going into the tournament. Stillwater was seeded first. And Stillwater, shucky darn, they lost in the first round. So Park was successful against Rogers. Then they beat Andover today. Tip of the cap to Coach John McGowan, who Zach and I went to school with. We know John very well. And his assistant coaches and the team, they really are playing very well. And regardless of the outcome on Friday night, we should all be very proud. And I know this community stands behind them. We were out, Senator Bigham, myself, Zach, and a number of other folks were out at the high school yesterday, sending them off. The public safety team had a number of vehicles with lights and sirens getting them out to Highway 61. And I got to tell you, man, it was a really moving moment. Zach, I don't think we've had a state champion here since '93. Is that right?
0 state champions.
0 state champions.
Been in state tournaments since '93.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so this could be, you know, a big, big deal. All right, well.
One out today, they held them.
I'm very excited by that. And while I'm speaking of Zach, I want to thank him and his team for the annual Parks Commission tour that we took earlier this week. We all got on the bus on Monday night. Mayor Bailey joined us, and we had an opportunity to go and look at some of the new parks that are coming online over the next couple of years, including Strawberry Fields Park and Glacial Valley and some others. And boy, I got to tell you, everybody in this community knows we take tremendous pride in our parks and green space. It's something that we really hang our hat on, and Zach and his team do a terrific job, but boy, they've got some really, really fun things coming online. And I just want to mention the highlight of the tour for me, and maybe the mayor can chime in when he gets to speak here, is what we've done with Hamlet Park. I believe the investment's been somewhere in the neighborhood of $5.5 million. The additional field space, the pavilion that we're going to build so that we can hold tournaments down there, the infrastructure to get people in and out, et cetera, really impressive. You know, I grew up going to Hamlet Park to play boot hockey when I was a kid because I lived right up the street on Hallmark and I just had to go down the hill. And I'll tell you what, that park is night and day from when I grew up, and there's a whole nother generation of kids and beyond who are going to appreciate everything that has been done down there. So thank you, Zach and team, for that. And then last thing I wanted to ask is just a question of our attorney, and it's kind of a out of left field question. Which is your favorite kind, right? Yeah. Are we required by law or statute to have advisory commissions in the city?
Your Honor, members of the council, there are some, but it is limited to planning commission. Because you have a zoning ordinance, you are obligated to have a planning commission. It could be made up of the council. You have chosen to have citizens that are not elected officials be on that planning commission. That is the only one that by statute I know you're required to have. Park and Rec is optional. If you do, then it has to be by ordinance. But I think those are the only two that I'm aware of. And Park and Rec is optional, but so Planning Commission is the only one that you have to have that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right, so for me, I have two items for you. First of all, and you were kind of alluding to the 4th of July, and I know that Scott just put out the press release earlier this evening, and I know we've been talking about this since we didn't get the chance last year to have fireworks. But I'm pleased to announce for sure, and we have the vendor, so we know that the fireworks are going to be here, because I know people have been hearing with all this kind of stuff. But we are going to have the 2021 4th of July fireworks is returning this year at Kingston Park. It is a tradition that the Cottage Grove Lions have been partnering with the city of Cottage Grove to host this event. And I just wanted to mention that there is a picnic along with the fireworks. It is definitely family friendly.
We actually have a number of quote-unquote door prizes, including some bikes and some other things that we'll be giving away for free. So bring your kids, have them fill out a ticket, but there's no cost to it.
Nope.
We'll have food, we'll have glow sticks, we'll have all the kinds of fun things like that.
Yes, and so I was going to mention there is going to be food there and food vendors, some food trucks and things like that. So it'll be a neat event. And it's really nice for all of us to celebrate coming out of the COVID parties last year or so. But I also wanted just to specifically recognize the sponsors that helped put this fireworks on. I personally went to these particular sponsors, with the exception of the city being the one, obviously, because we're all with the city. But these sponsors, either last year when we thought we were going to have it, had said, well, you just hold on to our money and next year hopefully it'll happen, or this year came to us and said, here's a check. And so I wanted to recognize Hy-Vee, 3M, Renewal by Anderson, and Tennis Sanitation, and obviously the city of Cottage Grove all together have put money together to make sure that we have a fantastic show on the 4th of July. Now, I will mention the festivities within the park begin at 5 o'clock, and the fireworks, of course, will be at dusk. And again, it's Kingston Park. For anybody that doesn't know that, it's at 9195 75th Street South in Cottage Grove. And then the last thing I thought I would just bring up, since it kind of got brought up this evening in actually, I think this has been brought up in the last couple of council meetings as it relates to citizen input at the open forum piece. And I wanted to talk about Cedarhurst. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion about Cedarhurst Mansion, and I know that the council's always been very open and transparent about the fact that we want that mansion to continue its legacy within Cottage Grove, to be brought back up to standards, if you will, so that it isn't going to fall apart. So the one thing I did want to mention, though, because I know there's a lot of conversation out there, and obviously we saw some people this evening that spoke to us, the petition and so on. I guess the great news is, I think anyway, the great news is that I don't know that at this point in the game that the owners of the buildings or the homes that are around Cedarhurst would have actually known any of this if it weren't for the fact that this developer actually was being transparent and getting out to ask for feedback. So the great news I wanted to share with the public is that all of the information that's out there is in what I'll call very early concept stages. And the developer has had open houses, is requesting feedback, both from the council, the city, as well as the residents around there, because they do not want to be bad neighbors. Matter of fact, it's my understanding they actually want to own and continue to be a part of our community in this area. This isn't a developer that's coming to town and they're going to slap up some stuff and then leave town. That's not what this particular company does. And I do know the council up here have had some opportunities, or will have some opportunities, to visit, if we want, some of the facilities that they're doing of similar type outside of Cottage Grove, obviously. So I just wanted to mention for the public, it's totally, I have zero issue whatsoever having people come up and express concern in that, because that's what you're there for, and that's what we want to hear, and that's what they want to hear. But rest assured, the council hasn't made any decisions. We haven't actually seen, I mean, I've seen a preliminary like this, which was on their website, or on the that petition website, which is a bunch of boxes with estimated densities and such on there. So I know all of us, when we've talked in workshop session, you know, we've had our vision of what we think the mansion should look like, and it's not necessarily what's here. So there's a lot of changes that are going to come yet before this comes to council, I believe, and the planning commission. So if you have feedback, please provide it. They're wanting it, we want it. And then that was kind of the only other thing I wanted to mention for tonight. Okay? All right, so other than that, we had, the next thing on our agenda is 13 is a workshop session. I'll open the public. We do not have one this evening, nor do we have 14, a workshop closed to the public. So we are now at adjournment. So who wants to make?
adjourn.
All right, Councilmember Olson's motion, second by Councilmember Deedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.